We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Antry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. It's a special week this week. There's all kinds of fun, amazing, unexpected things happening if you're a regular AVRant listener.
That's right. So you may be listening to this first or second, depending on how things downloaded to your phone.
Yeah.
But we released 2 episodes at the exact same time. So
Right.
It's 9 a.m. on whatever, today is the 15th of August, 2024.
That's right. Which is slightly different from our usual release time for our episodes, especially the YouTube version. You might have been wondering what happened this week. Where did it go if you're normally
Where
there
happened?
on day one?
Yes, so we have to release all these together because there's an embargo. And the embargo is on Trinnov's release of WaveForming.
The public release to all existing Trinnov Altitude owners or anyone who might be buying one today. WaveForming is available to you.
So we're going to talk briefly about it on this podcast, but mostly what we're doing is setting up for our interview with Dave Pedigo from Trinnov, which we did a almost 2-hour long, I guess probably with the intro and outro, 2-hour long podcast interview with Dave. So you have access to that right now. So if you're listening to this, it is there.
That's right.
So it is a standalone episode all by itself. We just recorded before we started this podcast the intro and outro for that, so it came a week later. We interviewed him last week when I was still in the depths of quarantine for
yes, indeed.
COVID.
That's why if you are seeing it on YouTube, there's no video of Tom because that was not something anybody needed to look at that moment.
Well, I was in my bedroom and I'd been camped out in there for near on a week, and it was things were. Let's just say things were ripe and I wasn't. When I get sick, I don't know why I do this, but I've done it since I was a kid. I put on whatever clothes I put on. Those are the clothes I wear until I get better.
There was muting of microphones and many facial tissues around in the background. So
it's coughing like crazy.
You can thank us that there was no Tom video for the interview with Dave.
Yes, you were
from
welcome
Trinnov.
for that. So yes, it was brutal. So we did do that, but the interview was great. So if you want to know about Trinnov's WaveForming, if you want to hear it from, I don't want to call him a horse, but the horse's mouth, Dave is going to take us through what it is, how it works. He's going to show pictures, images from the app that he's using, and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
So I ask all the hard-hitting questions. No, I didn't really ask a hard-hitting question. I ask questions.
I do believe we probably asked some questions that you're not going to see asked elsewhere, though, or
I think so too.
As in depth, because that's what we like to do around here. It was. We talk about AVRant, your home theater and AV questions answered, but these were our home theater and AV questions answered by Dave.
And you put a couple of geeks in a room with another
right.
geek talking about geeky things, and we're going to ask some really geeky questions. Yep. So, we kind of got down into it. We're going to ask some of the questions that hopefully that you have, and some questions that you wouldn't have thought of.
Possibly.
So check that out. It's a very fascinating interview, and it's a very fascinating technology. Mm-hmm. So the Dave Pedigo interview up now on YouTube and in our podcast episodes is going to be I think, what are we talking in 927? Which one that is? 927?
Yeah, that should be the number. This one should be 926, AVRant 926. That one should be AVRant 927. That's what we believe anyway. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we're going to differentiate the file names, though. I guess.
We'll put interview on it or something like that. Also, very quickly, want to shout out once again, give our thanks to the folks over at Caster Communications, Pete and Rachel, who helped set all of that up, and the situation that Pete was in that I mentioned in the interview outro there convinced us to pull out our interviewing skills, which we haven't used in a while. So thanks to them and thanks to Dave, because that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So as you probably can tell from the title of this podcast, I did another headphone review. Headphone reviews come in waves. I swear they all release them at the same stupid time.
Yeah, sounds about right.
A while ago, I reviewed the EarFun Air 3s Pros, or Air 3. I don't know if it said Pro after it. Anyways, gave it a glowing review. Here, I said it was one of those ear headphones that you're going to want to buy, either for yourself or for somebody else. They were very cheap. I think at the time they were like $50 or $60, and you may be able to find them for that right now. Still a good purchase. I got no problems recommending them. But then the upgraded version of those, the EarFun Air 4 Pro, are out now, and they retail for $90, so $89.95 or something. Look exactly the same. I mean, they look exactly the same. Like, you can't tell. I can't tell the difference between them. I gotta be careful not to mix them up.
Yeah, if you took the left ear from the 3s and the right ear from the 4s, you might not just tell visually that
might be able to tell the difference.
Okay.
These have all the Bluetooth that you can have. like they have like the LE audio, which is the new thing, right? With the Auracast or whatever it's called, where you can
the multiple.
Yeah, where you can get multiple Bluetooth devices getting the same stream. So that's, I mean, very few phones even support it yet. They had like a list of like, I think the Pixel 8 series and like a couple of Samsungs are the only ones that support them. iPhones don't, because Apple sucks. But so that is already in these headphones. The only thing, if you're really looking for every single stupid little thing, they don't have any kind of spatial audio head tracking thing in there. But that's literally the only thing they don't have. My favorite part of these headphones, I swear to you, first of all, they sound good. Linear, they're pretty linear overall. I would call them, for the price, they're linear enough. They're plenty fine. They're a little bit heavy on the bass, just a touch pushed in the bass.
Although, of course, many people will like that, so that makes sense.
It's a perfectly pleasurable listening experience. I find myself very much liking them just with a flat EQ on them. You can, I think I counted 30 different presets you can choose from, plus a customizable EQ. So if you can't find a way to make these sound the way you want to make them sound, that's really on you, not them. They also have one of those app things where you put it in and you go into a room, and then a quiet room, and then you go through like a little test to have them customized for your particular hearing, whatever. I've never liked those. I don't do them anymore. I used to try to make them work, and I never really liked how it turned out, so I don't even bother with that. But it's on there. I mean, LDAC is on there. aptX is on there, of all the different flavors of aptX. They have all sorts of stuff on there. But the thing I really like about them, and I like a lot of things about them, is the in-ear sensing. So if you take one out, it immediately stops your content so you can hear.
Pauses it. Okay.
And then when you put it back in, it immediately starts it again. Now, if you want to start it, you can start it with just one earphone, and that's not a problem. You can actually just grab the ear tip with your fingers, and it will start your content again.
Okay, that's the play pause button. All right.
It basically thinks it's in your ear.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The sense. So you can grab the little ear tip that would go into your ear. So these are kind of like an earbud in-ear hybrid, which I like that design, because they don't have to be like super in your ear in order to stay in, but they also still sound really good.
It's enough to provide a seal and not just a completely open type of sound.
Yeah, and plus, because they're an earbud style, kind of a hybrid style, it gives them a little bit more internal volume. So that helps with the bass, but it also helps with the battery life. So most earbuds or in-ear monitors usually max out around 8 hours for the earbuds, and then you get something else for the case, another 30 or 40 hours or whatever it is on the case. These have 11 hours on the earbuds.
Oh, wow.
So that
is longer than usual, for sure.
That is a significant improvement on your normal earbud lifespan. It's really nice. I mean, I have them here. I could show you, but they literally look exactly like all the other ones that they've made. The case doesn't look any different. The case still has inductive charging, which they've got. Almost every single manufacturer I deal with has gotten away from that. They don't have inductive charging on their cases anymore, which I don't like. I like having I have an inductive charger. I like to use it. So. I would like them to continue to have inductive charging on their cases, but they don't want to do it.
But you plug a cable into the case, and then the case charges the earphones. That's the way this one is?
these have inductive charging, which means you can put them down on a pad.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
So EarFun still has inductive charging, but most of the other ones don't. That I review. So overall, highly recommended. Again, they're about $90, but I still think it's amazing to me the quality that you can get. I remember spending $60, $80 on wired headphones years ago and having been just kind of garbage and plasticky and falling apart. These things are very nice. The other thing I will mention is they've got capacitive touch controls dialed.
Oh, okay, good.
It is dialed. It is only, you can grab the little stick that comes off of your earbud thing. No problem. That doesn't do anything.
Good.
There's one point, and the point is kind of concave, and it's right basically where it goes into your ear. There's like this little, you can see it on the pictures, but I'll show it to you right now.
Okay.
I don't know. Can you guys see that?
Let me transition the camera here a little bit. Yeah, there we go.
That little point right there. Okay. That is the inductive. That's the capacitive touch, I mean.
Okay.
And that's the only spot that you need to touch. But it's kind of concave, so your finger kind of fits in it really nicely.
Okay.
So I really these may be the only headphones that I've had no problems with capacitive touch at all. Like every time I want them to do the thing, they do the thing.
Nice.
And that's pretty much, all I do is volume control and start and stop. That's pretty much all I really need to do.
Yeah.
And then start and stop also almost always answers and hangs up on phone calls, which I need that because my wife, I love her. She seems to be incapable of hanging up a phone. Okay, so the phone calls go on until I decide that I'm done listening to her breathe, I guess. So I don't know why that is the case, but I think she just knows I'm going to hang up. But I very much like it. EarFun Air 4 Pro.
That is a tongue twister. EarFun Air 4 Pro. Gotcha.
I believe that review, if you're listening to this on the day this podcast is released, it will be out tomorrow. The review will be out tomorrow on AV Gadgets, so go check it out. It's a very short, actually, kind of a short review because I was like, you know what, I'm not rehashing all this. Oh, the other funny thing about this thing, have you ever been at your job and gotten so frustrated with your boss making changes to what you're doing that you just go, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to do it exactly the way you want, right?
Yeah.
So I think what happened was the programmer for the app just went, you guys can't figure out menus? Fine. Everything's on the front page. And it's just what you just keep scrolling and it keeps going. It's just one page. The whole app is one page. And
nice.
My phone has the ability when you take a screenshot to expand that to include the entire thing. So I've got this big long image of this app screen, and it just keeps going. It's so
4,300
like
pixels
it starts
long.
with battery indicators and it ends with reset phone, reset headphones, completely like factory reset. It's everything on there. It is so hilarious, but there are no menus. You don't have, when you click on the option, you might go someplace else, but all the options are there. It's not like there's a setting screen, a home screen, some other EQ screen or whatever. It's all there. You want the EQ, there's an EQ button. You press the EQ button, it takes you to the EQ screen, and then you back out. You're going to control change the controls. Change controls is on the front page. You press the button, it takes you to the control menu, then you go back out again. It's all on the front page. I just think that guy was like, you know what? Whatever. If this is what you want, if you want it to be one big long screen, fine. You get one big long screen. Leave me alone. I'll stop trying to make it actually be nice.
Yes. So. On the one hand, for accessibility, like for folks who are blind and have to use a screen reader, it's like, okay, good that there's no buried menu structure that you might have to work your way through, but very bad if you have to wait for it to wrap around and come back to the beginning to go through the list again. So, I can see that being an issue for accessibility. That's a little unfortunate.
Yeah. So what did we watch, Rob? Let's just go into that.
Okay, let's hop into that. I'm going to do mine reverse order of that I watched them. I went ahead and rewatched, because I have seen it before, but not in a while, not since it came out in the theater, Alien Covenant.
What is that one about?
Okay, so that is the most recent of the Alien franchise. It is the sequel to Prometheus, so it is taking place before the original Alien movie. So Ridley Scott.
End of Prometheus, Magneto created the aliens, right? Is that what happened?
Yeah, and his character David, it is very much a continuation of that. We find out where David and Shaw, they took the engineers, that original horseshoe-shaped type of ship that we saw in Alien, the original.
Alien,
they commandeered one of those ships, those two characters from Prometheus. So we find out where they went and what took place 10 years after the ending of Prometheus. So it's a new ship that is going out, a colonization ship that is heading out from Earth. We've never really seen what Earth is like during the time period of Alien, but there's all the little hints that things aren't going so great on Earth, and we're sending out these colonization and mining vessels and things like that. And David directly, talks about how humanity's sort of on its last legs. So, that's what this is. The Covenant is the colonization ship, but they come across the sort of last message that was sent out from that alien ship that David and Shaw were on prior to this planet, and they go to investigate because it's nearby on their already existing path. So the thing about Alien Covenant is I didn't particularly like it when I saw it in theaters, and it doesn't have like great glowing reviews or anything like that, but honestly, this many years later, and kind of having forgotten about it for the most part, I rewatched and I'm like, this was a lot better. This was a lot better than I remember it having been, mainly because I'm watching it now going in with essentially no expectations, and I'm like, oh, Ridley Scott at this point didn't care about the xenomorphs, and he didn't care about the aliens anymore. They're in there. They called this one Alien because people got upset that Prometheus wasn't called Alien, even though it's taking place in the same universe. But it's like he doesn't really care about the xenomorphs and the aliens much anymore. He put them in there as sort of like fan service, but what he cares about are the androids. That's what he cares about. Just like, he was doing stuff in Blade Runner as well. He very clearly cares about synthetic human beings and what they might be like and what they might do, and that's what he's interested in. So this story is about Walter and David, these two identical looking but very different personality androids, and the aliens and the xenomorphs are kind of just window dressing to throw a few action scenes in there and do a little bit of fan service, but he really doesn't care about them very much. And if you just watch it that way, as pretty much a straightforward horror movie, but more to do with what he truly cares about, which is Walter and David, I like this movie a whole lot more having watched it the second time. So I don't know what Alien Romulus is going to be about. That's why I watched Alien Covenant, because it's the most recent Alien movie, and Romulus is taking place in the timeline in between Alien and Aliens. So it is like, I don't know, 100 years or whatever after Covenant, but I'm going in like release order, and this was the most recent one. So I'm glad I rewatched it because I thought it was a lot better than my memory told me it was. Okay. Enough of that one. The one I did watch that I haven't seen before was Monkey Man. So this is Dev Patel's directorial debut. He stars in it as well. He also co-wrote it. So this is very much his movie. It has been... not completely inaccurately described. I mean, certainly in the trailers makes it look like Indian John Wick, right? That's sort of the feeling that you get from it.
I've seen so few trailers for this thing. I think I saw what looks like a monkey face person in a boxing ring.
He's in a mask. He's doing, what I think is meant to be more, it's unregulated, but it's more closer to kickboxing than anything else that he's doing in there. But yes, this is very much set in India, and what I think I liked most about this movie and what Dev Patel decided to do in the way that he shot and told this story and wrote this story, since he did co-write it, is, obviously I am used to predominantly Hollywood and Western movies, and you take a bunch of stuff for granted, right? A whole bunch of things in predominantly Christian religion, predominantly European and American history, and a lot of that is just sort of taken for granted, and stuff isn't like explained explicitly to the audience, and he does that with Indian culture. He's like, look, if you don't know what this particular story or god or place or whatever that we're talking about is, like, we're not going to hold your hand and explain to you. You've got Google. You can look this stuff up. They do a little bit of explanation, some of the sort of like mythology or some of the gods. They have some explanation there, like you might have in a Western movie too. But it's not like targeted at a North American audience. It's not this is meant for North American audiences and just happens to be set in India. It's like, this is an Indian set movie, and we're going to take it that way. And we're going to translate between languages like people do there, and we're not going to make a big deal about it. And I very much enjoyed that part of it. this movie had challenges during production. It was shot right at the peak of COVID going on.
Ugh.
And for that reason, they were not able to, and I genuinely believe they very much wanted to and had probably planned to shoot this in India, but they were forced to do a lot of the shooting in Indonesia, where they were, for whatever reason, able to, get around a lot of the restrictions that were going on at the time. And I believe that is responsible for my least favorite part of this movie, which is we don't get very many establishing shots. We don't get a very good sense of where we are. You don't get a great sense of this truly being in India, because they couldn't shoot it as being India because they were in Indonesia. And so there ends up being a lot of close-ups in scenes where I really would have liked that camera to have pulled back some more, but it's like they were shooting this in sometimes small warehouses, wherever they could find locations to shoot. Tons of restrictions. This wasn't a big budget movie, so it's not like they could spend all the money and time to find the places. Like they had to make do with what they had, and that is unfortunately evident in the final product. There's a lot of stuff that is, like I say, almost claustrophobic feeling, because they had to move the camera in so close because of the realities, the logistics of where they were shooting. That said, they had a couple of different fight and stunt coordinators on this who, obviously were taking the reins of those action scenes. And because they had a couple of different, and because they had these logistic issues while they were shooting it, there's it's not consistent in the feeling from fights to fights. Some of them are so much better than others, but the really showcase fights that he goes through, they are fantastic. They are great. They are in that very gritty, realistic style that we're more used to now with John Wick and movies like Atomic Blonde and things like that. But nevertheless, fantastic, really, really good. I love some of the very realistic. I mean, Dev Patel's character doesn't have superpowers, but if he has a sort of superpower, it's that this guy can just get beat up like crazy and keep on going, because he really, really takes a lot of beatings in this. But it is quite emotional storytelling wise. I would have appreciated if they, because he sort of doles out the flashbacks and the motivation for his character, everything that he's doing. He sort of doles that out little by little through the movie. And once we get to the whole picture of what happened in the past, I'm like, oh yeah, man, go get all these guys and kill them all, because this is a revenge movie. That's what it is. But I kind of would have appreciated having gotten to that motivation a little bit earlier in storytelling form, because for a good portion of the movie, like more than half of this movie, I was kind of like, am I on his side? Like,
is he good guy? Is he bad guy? What's going on?
I get that he's really mad and looking for revenge. That's blatantly obvious. But I'm like, but am I rooting for him or not? I don't really know. So I kind of would have liked to get to that a little bit sooner.
Is there kind of that in Kill Bill, the first one? We see the first fight, and then we see what happened to her later. I think that kind of happens there, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's the storytelling sort of thing where you start with the action, and then you flash back to see why this is going on and whose side you should be on. But if you wait too long, you're like, you spend as a audience member, maybe you don't know, but you usually feel like whoever's point of view you're seeing, that's the side you should be on.
Right.
But sometimes directors or writers will put you on in the point of view of the person who's not the good guy, and you're like, you feel a little uneasy until you get to,
sometimes there's very good reasons for doing that. Sometimes the flashbacks contain a twist, and you want to do that for that. In this movie, though, it was like I didn't dislike the structure. It was just that he had a lot of flashbacks that were very short and only doled out a tiny bit of information, but never did lead to a particular twist. It was just kind of like, okay, that wasn't, and that's a nitpick, honestly, in this whole thing. So I give it a big, big thumbs up. I love a lot of what was done here. I did notice, I was very much aware of some of the restrictions on the filmmaking itself. Those came across and were a detractor from this film. Unfortunately, I don't really blame the filmmakers, because there was a whole bunch of reasons out of their control for why it ended up that way. But it does hinder this movie from being everything that it could have been if those real world restrictions hadn't existed. So I don't want to knock the movie makers for that, but unfortunately what we end up seeing on screen isn't quite as great as I think it was envisioned to be.
go to the movies and see Borderlands with everybody else? I heard that's.
I did
really,
not. No, I haven't
really,
seen it. That one will be waiting for streaming for me.
With the tens of people that have gone to see it, I didn't even know it was coming out.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of commercials lately because I've been watching the Olympics, so I kind of feel like I should have known it was coming out, but apparently I did not. Maybe maybe they weren't advertising at the Olympics. I don't know. Anyways, I'm freshly out of quarantine. I am tested negative. I am back out in society. Still got a little bit of brain fog going on, so you have to forgive me if
Bear
sometimes.
with us.
Yes, please. And lower energy levels. I'm trying to kind of power through it.
Yeah.
You know how you guys operate, but when I feel like my body or my essence is not performing up to par, I'm like, you know what? If you just make it do it, it'll do it. So I do it. So I have been cycling again, but I've been very, very tired.
Yeah.
So I've watched the Olympics. It's pretty much all I've watched. Climbing, I have not finished the climbing yet, but because the IFSC Olympic channel and Facebook has no frickin' chill, I already know who won because they're all a bunch of a-holes and immediately posted at the top with pictures instead of just saying, congratulations to our winners, click more to know who won. You know, I mean, God, stop it.
We're past that now. Yep.
Yeah, so I've been watching weightlifting. I've been watching. When I was quarantined, I watched just so many stupid things that I now know exactly why I like certain sports and not other sports.
All right.
But that's immaterial. Let's review Peacock as an app. Okay, it's been a year. Actually, it's been 3 years. It's been 3 years since the last time I had Peacock, because I had Peacock for the Olympics and I have Peacock again for the Olympics, because I'm a huge Olympics fan. So, why does this app still suck so bad? Can we talk about it?
Dear.
Can we talk about the fact that I can be watching something? I was listening to Spotify on my computer. I pressed pause. I picked up my phone to listen to some music while I was setting up today. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I'll just open Spotify and I'll listen to Spotify. It was like, I looked at my computer, it's like, now we're streaming to your phone. I'm like, oh, so Spotify gets it. Mm-hmm, Spotify gets that if you're listening on one thing and you sign in with the same account someplace else, you're like, oh, he probably wants to pick up where he left off. Not only can Peacock not do this.
Yes.
At all. Mm-hmm. Right? Half the time, if you're watching on a device and you stop it and you're like, I'll come back and finish it later, or close the app or whatever, close the screen. I don't think it has an app. Close the browser and then you open it up later. It's like, do you want to resume? Yes. You're resuming from the beginning, by the way. That's where the resume started. It started at the beginning again because 3.5 hours of something, remembering where you were in the middle of that is easy to do. Plus, don't worry, they're going to make you watch 120 seconds of commercials minimum before you get to, once you click on something, to guess where you were in the whole thing. See. Why does this app suck so bad still? Why is it so bad? How can it possibly be this bad? You know, so if I start watching something on my computer, I have to continue to watch it on my computer. I cannot not watch it on my computer. Right. Because if I try to go into another room and watch it, it's like, no, you want to start? You want to start it over again now that you're in here? No. Why would I want to start it over again? Why is this? Then on top of that, and this drives me absolutely nuts. They'll flash like on the screen like where the current standings are, or who's got what scores or whatever, right? So what do you do, Rob, if you want to see that?
I mean, I usually just go to my phone to look at medal standings and things like that.
You could, but I mean, if you're watching the event and at that point in the event, they're like, this is what the standings are right now within this event. You hit pause. Oh, right. Okay. You hit pause so that you can read it, because it's like 30 people up there sometimes, and you're trying to figure out who's where and what's that. Like with weightlifting, because now that I'm apparently into powerlifting, things aren't always in order. They're like in some weird order, so you got to like look around to figure out who's going in first and who's got the highest opening weight, all this other stuff. So I'm like trying to say, you hit pause. You know what happens on your computer, Rob?
I can take a guess.
It dims out the bottom and top third of the screen. So there's like this little window in the middle where you can see things clearly. You know what's hidden? Almost always all the scores. Completely. Like you can't see crap anymore.
And you can't press up or down to make that go away, or
you would think. You would think you would be able to press escape or back or I don't know, literally any button. Pick a button. You can press nothing that I can figure out on my computer, at least. On the app for the Apple TV 4K is not quite so bad, but it's still not great. It still dims out a whole bunch of it, and there's no way to get rid of that dimming. You can do it on literally every other app I've ever looked at.
Right.
You can press pause, and then it shows like the little controls. Then you can either press down or you can press back, like an escape, and then it'll just show you the screen.
Right. I mean, I was thinking you were going to say that it showed you an ad, because that's certainly the world that we're getting to. Oh, it does that too.
Oh, yeah, it does that too. If you press pause on the big screen on the app for the Apple TV 4K, you get a second of it or a couple of seconds of it, and then it's like, oh, by the way, here's an ad.
Yeah.
And it's a static ad. It doesn't have music or doesn't move, but it's still
pause screen ads.
A pause screen ad. So now I can't see it. So I gotta press a button to make it go away, and then I gotta stare at it and try to figure out what I can't see through all the dimming. It's so bad. These are two basic functions that should be like this is, other than just getting the video and audio to you. They should allow you to pause it so that you can see things that you want to see. I mean, that's something a
user might want to do. It's not something a shareholder cares about, which is the only customers who matter.
So it is awful. I am very irritated that this app has not gotten any better. It is better. The navigation before was so piss poor that you couldn't do anything. At least now they're like browse by sport. Now, do they make it easy to browse by sport? No, because you have to like scroll down to get to the sports and then press all sports, because they'll give you like some sports, but just the ones they decided that, as far as I can tell, that moment are interesting. Like I've seen sport climbing on that little bar. Yeah. Right? Once and then never again. And if you scroll all the way to the right, like, so at the beginning it says view all sports, and then it starts listing out sports. So you can scroll to the right. Now, I'm doing this with a remote control on my TV. Right. Scroll to the right, you get to the end. What's at the end, Rob? Just the last sport that they decided that you wanted.
Not that you might want. To the beginning or anything.
But you have to go all the way back to the left to get to the all sports thing. Not the more. They couldn't put a more button at the end of that thing. Who is their beta testers at Peacock? What is happening over there?
Yeah. So, couple things. I don't know what happened to your camera, if that was a dog that moved it or you that moved it, but your camera moved. Second thing, I have to amend my praise for the CBC Gem app. Because I was using it predominantly on my phone for a lot of things, and I have an iPhone, and it works very nicely there, and I don't know if it works just as well on an Android phone, but it is perfectly fine on the phone. But I was using it in my place on my Apple TV 4K predominantly, where the experience was very nice. Similar thing, it would very often just kick you back to the very beginning of an event if I went back to watch it later, if I had watched anything else in between. Does not remember where I left off if I had left off partway through. But other than that, navigation was fine, and they have the lovely grid of all the events and filter things, and filter by day, filter by sport, filter by whatever. So all of that was working very nicely and sounds like a better experience than the NBC Peacock app. But my poor parents were like, they're using an Amazon Fire TV Cube, latest hardware, most powerful hardware.
That's new, yeah.
Yep, brings everything up, lickety split, works wonderfully in all of those ways. But they were like, we can't fast forward when we're watching on the CBC Gem app. Like, and some of these events are like 3-4 hours long, and like, we can't fast forward. I'm like, okay, I mean, my parents don't always have everything right with tech, and I'm like, there are like individual fast forward or rewind buttons on the Fire TV remote. I'm like, maybe they didn't know about those. They were just pressing right or left on the directional pad like you would normally do. But I was like, I wasn't sure. So I got over there and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work. Doesn't let you skip, doesn't let you fast forward. You just have to watch it in real time from the beginning on the Fire TV. And I'm like, well, that's weird. So I checked it out on some of my other devices, and like some of them it works, some of them doesn't. Some of them, when you skip, it pauses a freeze frame, and you can skip forward however much you want, but it doesn't show you what happens until you press play again. So it's like, so you have no idea where you are irritating. In the video. I'm like,
that's also on the computer. On my computer, when you put your cursor above the play bar, right? The big thing, you'll see kind of like a little pop-up image of kind of what's going on, right? Not with the Peacock app. It's just press. I don't know, pick a spot and press it and see what's there.
Yeah.
You know, and if you go past a commercial, you could fast forward the Peacock app, and luckily you could because you could see like where there's definite commercial breaks. There's more than what they show you, but there's definite commercial breaks. And if you're fast forwarding, you can fast forward past those commercial breaks. And then once you press play, you're going to see a commercial, or 120 seconds of a commercial, 2 minutes of a commercial.
So anyway, for Canadians on that CBC Gem app, from device to device, wildly different user experiences, so I can still give it praise for the Apple TV 4K version of it, but everything else, it might have been issues, and if you took my word on it, I apologize, because I wasn't aware at the time of how stupidly different it is, because you'd think something as simple as skipping forward 10, 15 seconds at a time or fast forwarding would be pretty universal user controls, but apparently not. Apparently only some devices can do that with the CBC Gem app, so...
And I guess in all transparency, I am using the website, I guess, on the Chrome, and also an Apple TV 4K. Yeah. Those are the two things I'm using, and I'm still not happy with either one of them. The Apple TV 4K is a little bit better, but it's still not great, and it's inexcusable that you can't pick up where you left off.
Right.
It's inexcusable.
I mean, I do kind of expect that from any Canadian thing, because we just don't have the servers to be able to remember where everybody is. So that's the excuse there.
I don't know about that. But, I'm watching something on my computer because my wife doesn't want to watch it with me. And then I come into the home theater and I'll watch a sport with her that she wants to watch, gymnastics, or I think she watches a lot of equestrian for some reason. And then, I want to go back and watch that same sport, but when I'm watching on the big screen and I'm in here, I can't do it.
Yeah. Lots of fast forwarding.
All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your question answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to our website, find our audio, our show notes, our Flickr album, so you can follow along with the pictures, as well as our older episodes. You can go to facebook.com/AVRant podcast, youtube.com/AVRant, where you can see the pictures embedded in the video.
That's right.
Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His socials is at First Reflect. Dog, you gotta stop hitting this camera.
That's what's going on.
First he was behind me snoring, and now he's on the ground. Like, he feels trapped because there's two wires in his way, and he can't get through. No. And he wants to get through, but now he's just sitting there staring longingly at these wires. Border. He's a very big dog. He's a big dog. His socials at First Reflect. I'm Tom at AV. Oh, he's backing up now. Okay. Oh, he's stuck. Nope, he turned around. Don't hit the light.
Need a separate doggy cam now on this podcast.
I do need a doggy cam. You're not lying. It's hot in here too. Nah. Socials at First Reflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com. Click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, where you can send us a PayPal donation. Raf did that this week. Thank you very much, Raf.
Yeah, Raf, thank you for your PayPal donation. We very much appreciate your financial support.
If you want to support us every month and not have to think about it, you can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast to sign up to become one of our patrons. We currently have 130 patrons, including Nathan in Ilango. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 130 patrons over there. Nathan and Ilango, thank you for being two of them.
We also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through, I guess, COVID and the release of Waveforming by Trinnov.
That's right.
So we got some from Dan, who thinks we provide a refreshing take on things in this overpriced world, as we are now talking about FOMO, about wanting to have a Trinnov processor that neither one of us can afford. Christian, who says he's returned as an AVRant listener after something like a 3-year-long break from regular podcast listening. He was happy to hear our voices again and is glad our podcast hasn't gone away since he first started listening back in 2015. He was also grateful to hear me talking about the importance of isolating and not exposing other people to COVID. He came down with it in early July, and while he was testing negative for COVID itself, after just a week or so, it led to a respiratory infection that he has not been able to shake. So that was in July.
Yeah.
So, dude, I hope you feel better. He says it's important to remember that these illnesses can leave a mark, and sometimes in unexpected and overlooked ways. That is true.
Definitely true.
I cycle with a lot of very old people, so I do not go anywhere near them until I'm testing negative.
Yeah.
And even then, that once they found out I've had COVID recently, they all shun me, which is fine. I don't mind being shunned. Nathan, who says he's been a listener since the Dina days. Joe, and says, no disease, flood, or horsemen of the apocalypse can keep us away, huh? Thanks for keeping the show going no matter what. Vasanth and Ilango. I'll say those names again.
Okay.
Dan, Christian, Nathan, Joe, Vasanth, and Ilango, thank you for thanking us.
And I'll say them one more time so they came from my lips. Dan, Christian, Nathan, Joe, Vasanth, and Ilango, thank you very, very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. Very much appreciate the kind words. And a big, big thank you to everybody who sends in their questions and, keeps on listening. Love it.
So in the news, we mentioned the leaked info about the new Google TV streamer on a previous episode. Now Google has made the official announcement. The Google Chromecast series of devices is dead. Long live the Google TV streamer.
Yep.
Which I wish, I kind of hate the name streamer, I'll be honest with you.
Oh, I thought you praised it before, saying at least it's descriptive and you know what the heck it is.
It is, but I kind of like Chromecast better, I'll be honest with you. I praise it in that now people won't have to wonder who apparently have never seen technology before, but come on.
Right.
So it costs $100. It will be available starting September 24th. And as we mentioned before, it's a set-top box now, not a dongle. Mm-hmm. You'll have to supply your own HDMI cable. Google doesn't have that kind of money to include an HDMI cable in the box.
No, it's too much.
Yeah. The streamer itself is slanted and rounded. There are two color options, porcelain, which is white, and hazel, which is dark gray. The gray one can only be purchased through the Google Store. It has Wi-Fi 5, kind of behind the times, and a gigabit Ethernet jack, Bluetooth 5.1. I think those headphones I just reviewed are like 5.4. Is that possible? I feel like it's
There's
5.
like a 5.3. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And they say it's an HDMI 2.1 port, but its max output is still 4K 60, and no mention of eARC to send audio from your TV into the Google streamer to use, say, Google Nest wireless speakers for TV audio.
Yeah, which is something that like Amazon Fire TV Cube can do. You can send audio from the TV into the Fire TV Cube, which can then send it to some Echo speakers. Use those. Right. Or your Apple TV 4K can do that. It can take audio from the TV and then send them to some Apple HomePod speakers. So I was thinking, Google has wireless speakers. They have a Google Home system. Maybe they'll do that. But nope, no mention of doing such a thing.
Dolby Vision, Atmos, and HDR10 Plus are all supported, and it uses USB-C for the power port. Mm-hmm. As leaked, there's a Thread radio on board, so the Google TV streamer can act as a Thread border router.
I mean, that's what they call them. Yeah.
I don't know what that means. Yeah. And connect to Matter Home automation devices. You can also bring up a Google Home interface on screen to manage your home automation setup from there. The remote gets a textured back that's less slippery, and all the buttons are on the face, no more volume buttons on the side. YouTube and Netflix are the only two dedicated service buttons, and there's a customizable star button that you can program. The remote can also beep if you lose it, which is nice. They're only claiming a 22% performance bump for the processor, so the hopes that this thing will outperform an NVIDIA Shield won't be fulfilled. It gets 4 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of storage. And of course, it wouldn't be Google these days if they didn't mention their Gemini AI in some way.
Yup.
Try not to roll my eyes too hard at all this AI garbage. You can talk to it by pressing the microphone button on the remote. So it gets a microphone button. I guess that's useful for somebody. And it will respond back with AI-generated summaries, reviews, and suggestions. And it can generate AI screensavers in between all the ads, that is. Let's see if Google still remembers that they made this thing in about a month and don't decide to just cancel it. And did I already say this in this podcast? How is Google Glass going to get mocked into non-existence, and yet Meta and Ray-Ban release glasses, and everybody's like, "Oh, those seem kind of cool. I should start wearing those for content creators."
They look like regular sunglasses. That's entirely the reason why.
That's so dumb.
Yeah.
We had somebody come into the bike shop the other day with those glasses on, and the owner of the shop was like, "I'm not talking to him. You have to talk to him," because they keep staring.
They might be recording me.
They like follow you around like their head is in a vice, and they follow you around with their glasses on, trying to. I don't know. It's so annoying. I don't really care that you've got those kind of glasses. I'm irritated that we can mock one glass into non-existence and then the other ones come out and we're supposed to be okay with it. It's like either we don't want people. There were politicians who were trying to, ban these things. And now Ray-Ban comes out with them with Facebook. I bought the U.S. government. And I'm supposed to be like, well, it's just for content creators so they can make TikToks. Shut up. As a bunch of
just had to wait. Google was too early.
So TCL took a look at Samsung's unreasonably popular The Frame TVs and then saw Hisense's less expensive Canvas TV competitors and thought to themselves, hey, we can do that.
Yeah, they're TCL.
So now they have the Next, spelled NXTFRAME TVs from TCL.
Yeah.
They are claiming the 55, 65, and 75-inch models are the thinnest all-in-one TVs, meaning no external connection boxes of any kind, at just 1.1 inches thick, and the 85-inch model is a real fatty, though, at a whole 1.2 inches.
Yeah, they couldn't do it.
Being that
keep
thin,
it 1.1 at 85 inches.
I know. Yeah, they had to put really big LEDs in there. There are, of course, edge-lit TVs with no local dimming.
That's
so,
right.
you know, they're thin, but they look like crap.
They are definitely competing directly against Samsung's The Frame.
But they have quantum dots for all that's worth.
Yep.
They can go up to 4K 144 with VRR. Can you imagine? Can you imagine buying this for gaming? With two HDMI 2.1 ports and two HDMI 2.0 ports.
That's right.
They're actually on the front, though.
No, they are definitely on
Can you imagine?
the little input side panel.
One at each corner.
Yeah, right. That might be useful. Who knows?
They are aimed directly at the frame with their ultra matte anti-glare screen finish, and they will include a flush wall mount in the box.
Mm-hmm.
The bezel isn't very thick, and it's off-white by default.
Yep.
The bezel is off-white?
The bezel is off-white in color. Not black, not silver, off-white.
Well, that's a phenomenal idea. And there's a wood trim frame option included in the box that snaps on with magnets.
Yeah. Now, it isn't very thick. So that's a difference from Samsung's The Frame or Hisense's Canvas TV. Those, they made the bezels fairly thick so that it mimicked, artwork with that type of frame. So this is doing the wood finish as an option, but it's still a very, very skinny little frame that this thing has. So just a slight change in color.
Weird on a huge 85-inch
TV, yeah.
With an itty-bitty
like that
frame around it.
0.2-inch frame, but now it's either off-white or wood trim. You have your choice.
Yeah. You can pay $150 to get a tabletop stand or $700 to get an easel-style floor stand with optional wheels and a decorative back cover.
Mm-hmm.
The 55-inch cost you $1,500. The 65 for $2,000 are available right now. The 75 for $2,500 and the 85-inch for $4,000 are coming in September.
Now, I should note, MSRP-wise, those are either the same or maybe $200 less than Samsung's The Frame. So, unlike Hisense, TCL is not really going after the price point in particular. They're doing we can make a matte screen, we can make frames that are something other than black or silver, but that's really what they're doing there. They're promoting the thinness, they're promoting the matte frame, but the prices aren't really undercutting Samsung's The Frame by very much at all. They're saying, hey, we can compete directly with Samsung.
So audio-wise, the TCL NXTFRAME TVs support Dolby Atmos, DTS-X, and DTS Virtual X out of the box, but with such skinny TVs and frames, even TCL admits you'll probably want an audio system upgrade, and that's where the NXTFRAME Pro models come into play.
That's right.
My God. TCL teamed up with Bang & Olufsen, the absolute pioneers and leaders in the idea of we can make it small, basically. We can make it small and cool looking, really.
That's the main
to include a wireless soundbar and wireless subwoofer to create a 3.1.2 audio system if your math is a little fuzzy. And it should be noted the NXTFRAME Pro displays don't have any internal speakers of their own, so this isn't just an add-on to the regular NXTFRAME TVs. They actually took something away for you. Look at that.
Yep.
Isn't that?
They took the tiny little speaker drivers struggling away inside the 1.1-inch thick NXTFRAME TVs. They took those out, put everything into a Bang & Olufsen soundbar.
55 inch is $2,000, 65 for $2,700, 75 for $3,500, and 85 for $5,000. All coming in September. An extra $1,000 for that 85 inch.
So I mean, they didn't say it explicitly, and it's not even really evident from the photos. Like, it's $500 more at the 55-inch size, $700 more at the 65-inch size, $1,000 more at the 75 and 85-inch sizes, both of them. I'm like, so is the sound bar bigger and bigger with the TVs?
It must be. It must be, right?
It's not really evident that it is. It's a little bit strange. Yeah, you would hope so. Still 3.1.2 in all cases. It's not like they put more drivers in the 85-inch size one, so I don't know what's really going on there.
I would hope that it would be larger. I would hope that it would be larger. Maybe it's not. But I would hope that it fits, fits into the bottom of the, what I mean? It matches the bottom of the
most of the
screen.
pictures also showed it like in that easel-style stand, which I didn't think was the best way to show it, but they do have one little image, like a cropped image, where the soundbar is just mounted on the wall along with the TV and doesn't have the easel-style stand. But since all the promo images have the easel stand there, that stand does not come with the TV. That's still $700 extra to add the stand on there. So, yeah, a little bit misleading.
Naturally, they come with a library of artwork that you can display while the TVs are quote-unquote off, or you can show your own photos, or you can use the built-in AI-generated art that gets you to answer some prompts and then make some images for you.
Yup.
How could that possibly go wrong, by the way? Oh, there's going to be a hacker out there who's going to do something, and you're going to see a bunch of AI-generated spicy content. I guess that's what they're calling it these days.
I mean, that's probably why it's prompts instead of just an open, tell us whatever you want to see. It's like it's somewhat guided.
They all run on Google TV and both have Chromecast and AirPlay 2 built in. They work with Apple HomeKit, Amazon Alexa, and Google Assistant. And like Samsung, they support Dolby Vision as well as HDR10 and 10 Plus and HLG.
Yep.
So there you go.
All the HDR formats on board there with your glorious edge-lit non-local dimming backlight system going on there. I'm less impressed with these than I am with the Hisense Canvas TVs, because the Hisense Canvas TVs cost considerably less and have a full backlight system, not edge lighting. So I'm like, okay, Hisense, if I'm going to go for a TV that has a frame around it that looks like something other than the skinniest black or silver border that you can manage, if this is an actual like wood-looking frame, and Hisense has more options, extra cost to get different ones, but they have more options available. So if that's the style of TV I were going to go for, I think I'd choose a Hisense in this case.
Warner Brothers Discovery just keeps knocking it out of the park with their cost-cutting measures. For example, on Thursday, they wiped everything off the Cartoon Network website, where you used to be able to watch oodles of clips as well as full episodes and seasons of animated shows. Now there's just a message to sign up for Max instead. The middle finger right underneath it.
Pretty much.
The only problem is, not all of the shows that used to be available on Cartoon Network sites are available on Max.
Yeah.
And none of the games or vast history of community forums and discussions are on Max. Those are all just kind of gone.
They are just gone.
Much like hundreds of episodes of Looney Tunes and the Flintstones that Warner Brothers Discovery has decided to wipe from online existence. Good times.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we just admit as a society that when we look back at this time in history, there's many things that are going awry. Let's, any time of history, you can look back and go, oh, this is all the bad stuff that was happening. But this idea that we must maximize profits for our shareholders,
right,
at the expense of literally everything else.
Nothing else matters. Also, even for our shareholders, what happens 6 months from now is not a big deal. Only the next quarter exists.
That's right. This idea that if we can shelve this movie that is done and ready to be released, and just take a tax write-off so that we can show
within
more
the next
profits.
3 months have a slightly better balance sheet for the next 3 months only.
Yeah, it's just nuts. It's nuts that this stuff is going on. Now, I don't claim to be an executive within one of these companies or understand all the nuance. I know there's more nuance than what I, as a consumer, understand. It's very easy for people to look from the outside and say, make vast generalizations and come to very wrong conclusions based on incomplete knowledge. I see that happen all the time. My wife works for the city. She knows a lot about the public works stuff that's going on in the city. And when I hear people talk about what the city's doing right and what's wrong, I'm like, if you spent 7 seconds talking to anybody or looking online about these things, you would understand that what you're saying is not just wrong. It's not even close to being reality.
Okay.
Like if you just knew anything about how public works, about how street improvement plans go, you would know that what you're saying doesn't even make sense rationally.
All right.
And so I'm not pretending that I can understand every bit of what's happening over a Warner Discovery.
Sure.
But at the same time, really kind of feels like I don't have to know everything to know that what's going on.
I mean, it does feel like they didn't ask what would make our customers happiest and do that. That doesn't seem to be the motivating factor here.
Well, and I mean, you can look at this Peacock app. It's been 3 years.
As
and
a
the
totally
app has
different
not
company.
got
Totally different company.
Yeah, sure, but it's another example of this where they're just like, how can I cut costs?
Seems to be,
and so that my bottom line looks good, regardless of what that does. Like, you can either cut costs to make your bottom line look good, or you can serve your customers to the point where it draws in more customers. Sure, one is slower. Right? One is slower. One requires you to do a good job, and for that to generate some goodwill, which brings on more people, which takes some time.
Yeah,
right?
That's the problem.
But it's more sustainable.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one, you can do literally, okay, the Batgirl movie doesn't exist anymore.
Right. We
can write off however many millions or billions of dollars or whatever it cost, and now we made a bunch more money. Just like that. Just flip a switch.
Seems like. Yeah. I am sorry to all of the people who use that Cartoon Network website, like not just to watch things, but like had a sense of community there. That was a big part of it. And obviously that is not everybody in the world. It was, a subset of people in that, but it's like, nah, that was like a part of their daily life, and it just disappeared one day. So not great.
Comments. Karl. As we know, Karl is always on the lookout for materials and coatings that absorb as much light as possible and get as close to true perfect blackness as science allows, since he wants to cover his whole theater room in Vanta Black, which absorbs 99.965% of visible light. Black 4.0 pigment, which absorbs 99.95%, or Musou Black, which absorbs 99.4%.
99.4%, that one.
know what it doesn't absorb? Dust. So the minute anything gets on the wall, that will become reflective. So whatever. So quite literally by accident, right in Rob's neck of the woods at the University of British Columbia, a group of researchers have now made the most light-absorbing wood on Earth. Mm-hmm. They were experimenting with exposing different woods to high-energy plasma in an attempt to make them more water-repellent, but they happened to notice that when the cut ends of some pieces of basswood, a common tree in North America often used for hand carvings and musical instruments, were hit by high-energy plasma, those end segments turned extremely black. Samples were sent off to Texas A&M, where they confirmed it was absorbing over 99% of visible light, making it the blackest wood product, blacker than ebony and blacker than onyx gemstones as well. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it, it's black wood. Okay.
Although there's still like this little bit of grain in there, because this is the cut end piece. So you're seeing the internal grain that is still there, and so it's like you can still recognize it as wood, but then the part that isn't the little grain fibers, it's like that's super light absorbing blackness.
Yeah. The research group has now shifted their focus, trademarked the discovery under the name
Nxylon.
Nxylon.
It's not spelled that way, but it's pronounced
It sure isn't.
Nxylon.
It's Nxylon.
That's
the lawn
right.
is about the only thing. I don't know what the Y is doing there. And they are building a commercial scale plasma reactor that will allow them to make pieces large enough to act as ceiling or wall tiles, which obviously has Karl very excited. The name Nxylon, or whatever it's called, is a combination of Nyx, the Greek goddess of light, or Nyx, whatever, and
goddess of the night, not light.
Not a goddess of the night. Sorry, and Exelon. Whatever, excellent, whatever. The Greek word for wood, and the UBC team has already been able to commercialize it into watch faces and other jewelry where ebony or onyx might have been used before. Well, I mean, that's great, I guess.
Yeah, they're moving quick.
I think that's great.
It's cool.
I think it's, look at, they're all wearing the watches too.
Why wouldn't they? they got something to promote now.
How come what's her name doesn't get one at the end there? She doesn't get a watch. She's
up with that? Something in her hand.
That feels.
I don't know what she's holding in her hand. Maybe it's a pocket watch.
What is she holding in her hand?
Watch.
If you're not looking at this image, it's misogyny personified.
I think that's a pocket
guys
watch
all get watches, and she gets to hold whatever that is. Oh, you know what that is? It's a pocket watch.
That's what I was just saying.
Well, you should have said that louder, or I would have heard it. Look at these guys. Look like they just took all their lab coats out of the bag. They're all got the creases in them still. I'm like,
that might be the case.
I just love the way it looks like they've ever worn a lab coat before. Okay. Let's get to some questions so I can ignore Rob and go get some more coffee.
Okay.
Dan has heard our criticism of REL's recommendations for how to set up subwoofers. Criticisms? Me? of REL?
Mm-hmm.
Did you let them play for 90 hours to make sure that they were broken in before you set them up?
Right.
Because
and Tom did say it clearly, but just to make it extra clear, we are talking REL. Nothing to do, completely different company from RSL. RSL love their subwoofers. REL, we have some problems with their marketing.
I actually don't have a problem with their subwoofers.
I
have a problem with them.
That's going to come up. Yeah.
And for the most part, he agrees with us. But if we put aside the things they say about running speakers full range, creating stacks of overly filtered subs, and then supposed stereo bass, we've set ourselves up many REL subwoofers, just the actual subs on their own, are actually quite good, right? So, basically. Yeah. So a friend of his already owned a pair of older REL subs, and this friend decided to upgrade by getting a new single REL HT 1205 Mark II, which is a cell 12-inch 500-watt model that sells for just under $1,000. This friend had Dan over to his place to help with sending it all up, and Dan came away pleasantly surprised. Dan is fairly certain his friend will end up incorporating the two REL subs they already own, but when Dan was there, he disconnected those two older subs and only focused on dialing in the new single HT 1205 Mark II, and there's only one seat that his friend cares about, so there's a single sub, single seat situation. Once Dan was satisfied with the placement in the room, he came away pretty shocked by the performance he heard. It was super fast, powerful, yet super delicate, whatever that means.
Those were his words.
And wound up spending a good amount of time just listening to it. In his own setup, Dan used a pair of Velodyne DD10 Plus subs, but he says he has listened to a lot of under $1,000 subwoofer models, and this REL HT 1205 Mark II would now be his choice if he had to replace his Velodynes with something at that price point. So be eager to hear eager for us to evaluate this particular REL subwoofer model in person, but assuming that we haven't already, which we haven't, what would be our explanation for why this particular sub under $1,000 sub sounded faster, more powerful, yet more delicate than any other subs he's heard at this price class? I mean, you're not listening to him in the same room. Let's just start with that.
Yeah, this is the classic case, not inexplicable, not unexpected, but classic case of attributing to a single variable, a single change,
when 1,000 other things have been made. I mean, I cannot
tell
you
variables that you weren't focusing on or changed along with it.
This happens all the time in every single hobby that there is at all, and we talk about it a lot in just even when you're only changing one thing. Just say you're like, I'm just switching. I'm just testing out speakers, right? I got my main speakers and I'm swapping them out back and forth, and these new speakers sound, or I take my old speakers out, I put new speakers in, and suddenly everything sounds better. Everything sounds more amazing. Everything, I can hear things I've never heard before. And what often happens in those cases is you stop listening to your old speakers. I mean, not using them, but you stopped listening to them a long time ago. And then you swap out speakers, and now you're paying super attention.
Actively paying attention, yep.
And suddenly you hear things you've never heard before. You have heard them before. Maybe they are better, but you need to do the A-B back and forth to really kind of know. And you have to really isolate this one variable of this one sub,
which is tough,
in this one room, which is so hard to do that it's often not done in reviews. And to say that this sounded more like, what does even a delicate sub sound like? I think I know what he's talking about.
Okay, yep.
I think, but do I? What does that mean to him versus me? I don't know what that means. But what I'm hearing is you paid really close attention to setting up the subwoofer, and it sounded, in the end, you got it dialed in really good.
Sure.
That is the end of that story. That is the end of it, and you're really happy with it, and you would recommend it to somebody else. I bet you dollars to donuts you could take that same sub, literally the exact one, and move it to a different room, and where it could not be placed exactly the way that you wanted to place it, and it would not sound powerful, faster, delicate, or whatever the other things are that you're talking about in that room. And you would be like, I will no longer recommend this sub. And this is not a knock against you as a person. Nope. This is just kind of how we work as human beings.
And I also want to be clear, not a knock from me against this subwoofer out of hand. Because I'm not seeing anything in these specs that are here that makes me go, oh, there's something obviously wrong with this. This is a 12-inch driver in a sealed cabinet. This is a sealed sub with a 500-watt RMS. So that's not peak power. That's 500-watt sustained amplifier. One little quibble that I have with it is that it has just a 0-180 polarity switch. It doesn't have fully variable phase, but that's not unique to this REL sub or something completely unusual. And then if you look at the aesthetics of it and the $1,000 price point, I'm like, yeah, that's completely, reasonable and justified. You might buy it on looks alone, because if you happen to really like the looks of this thing, that could be reason enough to get. And I don't have any beef with this subwoofer out of hand. But also looking at the specs, by their own admission, they're quoting a -6 dB point, not -3, -6 dB point, 22 hertz that they're claiming, and no other parameters around that. So we don't know if that's actually anechoic or if that was in room. I kind of suspect that's actually in room because they're talking about how they don't use any DSP. They're very proud of that in their marketing. And you don't have to use DSP to make a good subwoofer. That's not something that I have a problem with. But they do talk about having their own whatever special sauce REL analog filtering that's going on. I would assume that's some kind of rumble filter at the bottom, and obviously it has some kind of low pass filter on it up at the top of its range, but other than that, I'm not exactly sure. So one of the things that's actually very common is if you were coming from, let's say you have like a smaller enclosed room, not tiny, but, spare bedroom sized enclosed room, and you get a, popular under $1,000 sub, like let's say a SVS PB 1000, PB ported 1000, big sub, but a lot of people like to do that. And you put that sub in your room and you get it up, set it up as best as you can, but you listen to it. And then you bring in a considerably smaller, maybe even less powerful sealed subwoofer. And you listen to that in that very same room in a similar setup, and you go, my goodness, the sealed subwoofer sounds, whatever adjectives you want to use, whatever subjective terms you want to use, right? Faster, cleaner, whatever it is. But then you go and you just play a sweep, just a regular old sweep, and you listen to it, and it becomes abundantly clear that much smaller sealed subwoofer is definitely rolling off at a higher frequency on the bottom end of that subwoofer sweep, clearly rolling off faster than the ported sub is, or maybe the ported sub, because of room resonance, it actually gets louder as you get down to those 25 hertz and right down to 20 hertz things. Maybe even starts actively ringing the room, or you're hearing other things vibrating because those really low frequencies are starting to physically vibrate things in the room that the smaller sealed sub just doesn't do, because it just isn't outputting, bass at frequencies that low. I've come across that myself in person. I am guilty of, earlier on attributing to the subwoofer some characteristic of transient response or overhang in the bass or something like that, to a subwoofer that was simply playing lower than a different subwoofer, or playing louder at those very low frequencies than the other one. If I filtered those off, applied a filter, and had them through some filtering very similar deep bass roll-offs, all of a sudden couldn't tell them apart anymore. Yeah. And it really was that, again, room interaction, higher output at very, very, very low frequencies, resonance of the room itself, vibration that I was maybe overtly aware of or not overtly aware of, but, vibration that's taking place. All of these things give that subjective impression of one sub being faster than the other, one sub being, quote unquote, more delicate than the other, whatever it is. But that's almost why it's, in some ways, more, I don't want to say more important, but it is important to also get those objective CEA 2010 style measurements to look at this stuff, including things like the group delay, because that is part of, we have seen subs where if all you looked at was the output versus frequency, you might go, oh, that's producing, tremendous output at these low frequencies. And then you see the group delay and it's like, oh, it's like 3 seconds of group delay. Like it's relying on port resonance to make that sound. And that sub will sound slower. I mean, it is genuinely transient response-wise slower. The signal said stop and it didn't, right? It just kept on playing for another several cycles before it actually stopped in response to the signal. So I think it's important to see those measurements like that and put a fair amount of emphasis and weight in your evaluation of it on measurements like that, because we are so easily distracted, masked, fooled, whatever type of word you want to use, but it's hard for our human brains to separate the subjective experience from multiple variables that are changing at once. So that's what I think is going on there.
Yeah. And like I said, we see this in just about every single type of hobby or anything where you're looking for improvements or changes where you're hoping that you're getting something better for your money, sort of thing. And it's so very important for you to really evaluate things in as much of a controlled environment as possible. That's why when I do headphone reviews, I put everything into a flat EQ. Like some headphones don't have an app, right? So you don't get that option, but you want to make sure that you evaluate them in as flat an environment as you possibly can. I've even had headphones where they have a flat setting in their EQ, and I won't use it because I don't know that it's actually flat. I know that they're customizable EQ. I can make it show flat, and at least that is, something across all things. But I also have to think about, how am I using these headphones? In what ways am I using? Where am I using them? Am I testing them in the same room, in the same environment? Am I doing them outside, inside? Is there noise around? Is there not noise around? All these things kind of end up coming into play. And even then, a lot of times I qualify things. Like the headphone review I just did. I'm like, listen, I think they're a little bass heavy. Are they? I mean, I don't know. I think they are. But they sound pretty even throughout the frequency response, but but when you're listening to content, they feel a little tipped up in the bass, but in a pleasant way. So what does that mean? Does that mean I happen to hear a couple of songs? Because I'm not always listening to the same songs over and over again. I mean, like many people, I do for testing purposes. But then a lot of times I spend time with the headphones just listening to music, whatever Pandora is playing, or Spotify in the case for these particular headphones. Whatever they're playing, I'm listening to, just to get a kind of sense of how they sound. But I might not hear the same songs every single time. And maybe that tipped up bass is because one song I was listening to sounded a little bass heavy, and then maybe because it is a little bass heavy. Do I attribute that to the song? Do I attribute to the mix on that particular stream?
More testing
that streaming service.
To be sure. Yeah. But to end this on a positive note, if you bought an REL HT 1205 Mark II and you're happy with it, I got no beef with that. I'm not going to tell you to return it, sight unseen, because the subwoofer itself looks like a completely reasonable design.
And especially when you have a single subwoofer in a room like this, if you come up with a good result, don't look gift horses in the mouth and say, oh, well, I can get slightly more better performance or lower performance or louder performance out of this other sub. I should upgrade, because you might upgrade and find, like Rob was saying, it suddenly activates a bunch of crap in your room that you didn't have activated before, and now everything sounds terrible.
That's right.
So stick with what you got. And if you go around recommending this to everybody as the best subwoofer in the whole world, you're wrong. But at the same time, it's not a bad recommendation, so whatever.
Yeah.
Raf in Australia. Raf is the fellow who was dissatisfied with the audio quality of the movies he rented via Amazon Prime Video. The video quality looked great, but the audio quality seemed subpar to him last week. Will wrote us to talk about Raf's situation, how we at least have some evidence in the form of bitrate data that Apple movie rentals streamed on Apple TV 4K consistently have higher bit rates than Amazon Prime rentals, so also streamed on the Apple TV 4K. We said we didn't know what hardware Raf was using for streaming rentals, but we figured that if Amazon Prime rentals on whatever hardware he is using aren't providing him with the level of quality that he wants, then you have to make a change, either to new hardware, a change of streaming rental service, or both. Yeah. Rob also said that if Raf has his reasons for not using Apple products, then he isn't going to try to change his mind about that. But Will figured, why not go with the only numbers-based evidence that we have? Apple movies via Apple TV 4K, we know that combo delivers consistently good results. So Raf wrote back to us. He says he has been using the apps built into a Sony OLED TV, which uses a Google TV interface. As much as he cares about quality, he also cares about convenience. So being able to pick up a single remote and not having to buy anything else or add any additional devices and complexity seems like the reasonable thing to do. But he isn't opposed to Apple in any specific way and would consider getting an Apple TV 4K and using the Apple TV app to rent movies if that truly provides a consistently better audio quality. So before he takes the plunge, a couple of questions. First of all, the fact that these companies all fight with each other about whatever. If you're using the interface that's a Google TV interface, don't be surprised if the Amazon stream sucks.
Right.
That's what I mean.
Yep.
Because that is not beyond the realm of possibility that they're like, Yeah. So he still wants a convenient single remote experience. Obviously, if he wants to dig into any settings changes for his TV or sound system, he knows he will need to use the remotes that came with those devices. But just for regular day-to-day use, will he be able to essentially replace the Sony TV remote with the Apple TV 4K's remote instead? You might be able to do the opposite, because I don't use the Apple TV 4K remote except when I need to dig into specific things. You may be able to use your CEC or whatever it is that you're using to control the two things.
Definitely be CEC. Yeah. It would definitely be CEC that you'd have to rely upon. See, I mean, for the most part, if you have a single source situation, right? You got the one source device, and that's going to be the Apple TV 4K now, if that's the way you decide to go. And then you have your display and you have your sound system, whether that's a sound bar or an AV receiver. In that single source situation, CEC from the Apple TV 4K tends to work pretty decently. There is a dedicated power button right on the Apple TV 4K, and in the Apple TV 4K's setup menu, there are quite a few different options for what type of CEC response there's going to be, whether it's going to power on the other devices that it's connected to, whether you have a soundbar or AV receiver present. There's actually options for that in the Apple TV 4K setup menus. And so in terms of, you press the power button on the Apple TV 4K remote, the TV turns on, the soundbar or the AV receiver also turns on. When you're done, you press the power button and all three devices turn off together. You're not really changing inputs, but there's the CEC to at least, when you use that source device's remote, it all gets set to the correct input, and then controlling the volume with the volume and mute buttons that are on the Apple TV 4K's remote, controlling those on your soundbar, your AV receiver. That all does work pretty decently. That all works pretty darn well. So for day-to-day, if you're in a single source situation, I think you'll be pretty okay. Where you will potentially run into problems is once you add more than one source device. That's where things start to go a little bit haywire, because if you're trying to switch to other source devices, you're not going to have a good time using just the Apple TV 4K's remote. As Tom alluded to, there is the option to go in reverse, which is the Apple TV 4K in its setup menus gives you the option to connect somebody else's remote to control the Apple TV 4K instead. Now, the thing is, I've had clashes with that. Like, if I plug my Apple TV 4K into my Samsung TV that I have, oh man, does that Samsung TV remote have, like, no way of not controlling the Apple TV 4K. And because I have more than one source plugged in, that starts to create issues. I have to go in there and make sure CEC is just off for everything. Otherwise, that little Samsung remote is going to do its darndest to always try and control the Apple TV 4K, even when I don't even want to use the Apple TV 4K at that moment. Right. I want to use some other source. Nope, it wants to control that device along with the TV. So yeah, you're going to potentially run into those issues. But if really all you want, if you're going to have one source, like it sounds like right now he's just been using the TV and that's been his source, it's like you're going to have the one source and it's going to be the Apple TV 4K, and all you want to do is power everything on together, power everything off together, and control the volume. That it will do pretty well.
Yeah. So his Sony OLED has all the streaming apps he uses built right in, and Netflix, for example, looks and sounds great. How is Apple TV 4K going to compare? Is it only the Apple TV app and Apple movie rentals that look and sound best on the Apple TV 4K hardware? Will all the other streaming services actually look and or sound worse when he uses his Sony than when he uses his Sony's built-in apps, or will be able to use the Apple TV 4K for all his services and have the convenience of a single source device that way? Honestly, okay, so I use Apple TV 4K, so does Rob.
Yeah.
Everything looks great on it as far as I don't have no problems
I really
with
never had an issue video-wise.
As much as I don't like Apple, one thing that you can count on is they are going to get updates at least as soon as anybody else. Like their apps are going to be the earliest ones updated, other than like native apps for some specific devices. Like your Chromecast is going to get the Google TV Play, whatever app. Yeah.
Like
first.
honestly,
the Amazon Fire one will get an Amazon app.
The smartphones are going to get it first before everything. That's the absolute priority for all of the streaming services are the smartphones. They're going to get it number one. But yeah, Apple TV 4K out of all the dedicated streaming boxes is usually the one right behind it. That's the next one that gets it.
So I would worry less about the Apple TV 4K than I would some of the other devices.
And I will say outright, right. In many cases, it has the best version of, like, for services that don't have their own dedicated streaming box hardware, for Disney Plus, for Max, in my case, for Crave up here in Canada, like, the best version of those apps is on the Apple TV 4K. Netflix looks and sounds fantastic from an Apple TV 4K. I can guarantee there's no issue there of that service being downgraded by Apple or anything. The one that is a little suspect is Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime is the one where on the Apple TV 4K, we have actual numbers-based evidence to suggest, hey, you're not getting the highest quality audio coming through Amazon Prime Video from the Apple TV 4K. You might have to get an Amazon Fire TV device to get the very best Amazon Prime video and audio quality from that particular service. So that does seem to be the one bit of an outlier in there. Also, the Apple TV 4K is not the very best YouTube device. It is not. It is also not the very best Plex device.
Right. That's true.
So if those are services that you care a tremendous amount about, YouTube and Plex, then, you know, they're
honestly,
there.
Most of the stuff on YouTube looks like crap anyway.
Yeah,
so
I mean, they're on the Apple TV 4K. It's not like you can't access those services. They're certainly there, but they are not the very best versions of YouTube and Amazon Prime Video and Plex on the Apple TV 4K. So yeah, we're living in this world where, unfortunately, we would love to be able to point you to one device and be like, you get the very best from absolutely every service on this one piece of hardware, but that just doesn't exist. But for the majority of services, the Apple TV 4K tends to get the best version.
Infinite Gary, you know, Tom brought up a pretty good point about the Kaleidescape Strato V and the $3,500 to $4,000 you have to spend on it. Just the hardware, no movies on it until he spends even more money. $4,000 does buy a lot of discs, and he already owns a Panasonic UB9000 Ultra HD Blu-ray player.
Right.
So Gary sat himself down, had a look at the movie release calendar, and also took stock of what he actually watches most of the time when he just sits down to enjoy something.
Yep.
Turns out it would average out to maybe 1 or 2 movies per month. That's even high for me these days.
Sure.
And he would that he would actually want to own.
Yeah.
There are plenty of one-and-done movies he might watch, but he wouldn't even pay to rent those. He'd just catch them on a streaming service whenever they happen to show up.
Sure.
And then if he's being honest, most of his viewing time is streaming series shows, not movies, and most of them are exclusives.
Yeah.
So he feels like he's basically talked himself out of buying a Strato V at this point, and we know it isn't because Gary hates spending money on gear for his home theater or anything. He was very tempted, almost pounced, but sober logic is telling him the value just really isn't there in his case. Before he totally makes his mind up, did he overlook anything? Do we agree with his thought process? I mean, I came up with a thought process, so yes, I agree with it. I mean, that was my idea. I think there are people out there. There's 2 reasons you want to have a Kaleidescape. Okay. There's 2 reasons, I think, valid reasons you want to have a Kaleidescape, and I think they're both valid. The number one reason is you are a super consumer and you want to have the best possible everything, and you also buy a lot of stuff. Yep. And it's just physically takes up a lot of space. You really don't want it have all that space taken up. And the convenience of this and being able to have access to, now you would buy the whole big kit and caboodle, but we'll pretend that the Strato V is your entry level drug into this whole thing. Sure. You know that this would make your life better. Okay. That's the number one. The number 2 is you got money to burn. You want to impress people who aren't actually going to be impressed by this thing, but whatever. You think that they will, and therefore you will. The idea of so I rode a bike yesterday that was in the shop that, like, base level cost $20,000. Okay, it's a $20,000 bike, and this bike had many upgrades to it, which probably pushed it much closer to a $30,000 bike. This bike's the price of a car. Okay. This is the Ferrari of bikes. This bike is as good, if not better, than what the Tour de France guys are riding. Okay. If you don't know, Tour de France, they have to ride bikes that are commercially available. They cannot ride bikes that are not commercially available, and there's a weight minimum they have to reach. Like, they can't be too light, because if they're too light, they become unsafe. And the UCI has put restrictions on that. So this bike may be even better than some of the bikes, technically better, lighter, faster, whatever, than some of the bikes that the Tour de France guys are riding. So I rode it the other day because I had to. I actually literally had to, because we had made some changes to it and I needed to make sure that it was riding correctly, which it was not. So I had to fix it again. But how much better is that $25,000 bike or $20,000 or $30,000 or whatever it ends up being bike than my bike, which it costs a fraction of that. It is better in most ways. Is it that much better? No. What it is, though, is a status symbol. People see that bike and go, whoa, that's a nice bike. That's a nice bike. Yeah. But you know who knows that it's a nice bike? Other people who have bikes that are that
bike
nice.
Enthusiasts, not normal.
And you know what they also have? They also have really nice bikes, and they considered that bike, but they thought it wasn't worth the money. Therefore, they are impressed that you spent the money on it, but they also think you're kind of dumb for doing it. And that's what happens a lot of times when people try to buy, like they buy the gear that they think will impress people. Like people come over and they're like, "Wow, those are really big." I'm thinking about those massive audiophile type speakers.
Sure.
Wow, that's a really big speaker, and that sounds really nice. And they walk out of your house and they go, "That dude's an idiot." He wasted all that money and all that room.
I don't think you get that from Kaleidescape. That's going a little bit too far.
I am. I'm being very. I'm talking in generalities here.
Sure.
Now, from the Kaleidescape part of it, you're going to have people who are going to come into the room and they're going to be like, "Oh, you have a Kaleidescape. That's really cool."
Yeah.
And they're never going to think about it again.
Maybe.
So those are the two reasons I think that are valid for buying a Kaleidescape.
You're
really the type of person who's going to use it, or you're trying to impress people.
Okay.
You're neither of those right now because you've talked yourself out of the first one, and you don't really care about impressing other people. So therefore, because I've seen some of your setups, let me be honest with you, and they all have nice speakers, but sometimes they're nice speakers placed on top of like boxes or chairs or something. So you're not trying to impress anybody. You want good things for the sake that they are good. This is a good thing that you don't actually need. So therefore you've talked yourself out.
So a third reason that might have been overlooked is that Kaleidescape does quite frequently have the movies available for you to watch at home before any other service.
That's a good one.
Yeah, certainly before the physical disc comes out, but quite often even before it's available on other like rental services, not streaming, because streaming will be later as well, but like just your regular rental services, including Apple Movies, which, out of the rental services will probably get it first, but Kaleidescape will have it not way before, but like a week before, sometimes 2 weeks before. So if you're all about getting the movie at home as quickly as possible without going to the what is that red carpet system where each movie costs $500 that the Hollywood bigwigs have, Kaleidescape is like the next step from that. you're going to get it as early as you possibly can. So if that's important to you, and it is for some people, right? For some people, getting that movie as fast as they possibly can, that's going to be a big selling point to them, and Kaleidescape gives them that. So that could be a reason to do it. It absolutely could.
So Gary was watching his kitchen OLED. Again, not trying to impress people. He just wants to have good TVs everywhere.
Yep.
The LG G4 that we like to chuckle about being set to 5 out of 100 for its OLED light setting. When the MLB game he wanted to watch was starting, he switched over and thought to himself, that looks too dark.
Yeah.
So he grabbed the remote and clicked the OLED light setting all the way up to 10.
Yes.
And the TV exploded with lights.
I don't think so. Because it could have gone to 100, but he went all the way from 5 to 10.
He had to leave the room for a few minutes, and when he returned, he looked at the game and thought, too bright, and wound up lowering the OLED light setting back down to its professionally calibrated setting of 5.
Yeah.
So what happened there? Because he didn't change any of the ambient light levels, have we ever had a similar experience?
Yes, my pupils have dilated in the past.
Yes, yeah. I too have functional eyeballs.
Yep. So whatever you were watching before you switched the MLB game, it was bright. It was a brighter show. Your pupils constricted a bit while you were watching that show. Switched over the MLB game. That had a lower average light level. Your pupils were still constricted. It takes longer for our pupils to open back up than it does for them to close down. They close down pretty darn quickly, right? You walk from a dark room into a very bright room, your pupils close down really quite rapidly. But you walk from the bright room into the dark room, and it takes a while for those pupils to open back up. That's what happened. You left the room. It was probably dim in the rest of your house because you like to keep light levels low. We know that about Gary, and your pupils got to open back up. He came back in, and now the TV looks too bright because he brightened it up. That's what it was.
Nathan initially had a question for us that he ended up solving on his own, but it still raises an interesting little idea for us to discuss. In his room, his living room, Nathan has a TV with just a pair of bookshelf speakers on either side. He takes the optical output from his TV that feeds a basic 2-channel DAC with a volume control. The analog outputs from that DAC and volume unit feed a pair of Sasi monoblock amps. This is overly complicated. And those power the bookshelf speakers. Nothing in the signal chain has any EQ, no trim level adjustments either. Recently, something sounded a little off to him, so he did the only reasonable thing, and he busted out Room EQ Wizard to measure his pair of bookshelf speakers, as one does.
As any person would, anywhere in the world. That's right.
My wife does that all the time.
Yeah, that's right.
My
Not
dog
just
did
here
it the other day.
on AVRant and in home theater forums. Anybody would do this.
The graph he got indicated his right speaker was several dB louder than his left speaker, and he thought he knew the reason why right away. His setup is not symmetrical. The right speaker is close to the sidewall, while the room is basically open on the left side. Okay, so we got a graph. You'll see it in the Flickr album that you can find on the website or on the YouTube channel, YouTube version of this. And yeah, they look pretty similar lines, except the red line is lower than the green line.
That's correct.
Well, to cut to the end of things for a moment, it turned out somehow the gain switch on the back of one of his Sasi monoblocks had been switched. So once that was back to where it should be, his right and left speakers measured very closely in level, and everything sounded right as rain again. So this is another graph, and the lines intersect quite a bit. But prior to finding the actual culprit, a question had come to mind. Without the presence of a trim level setting, could a balance control solve the difference in level between right and left speakers? His sources are Apple TV 4K with and a Sonos Connect. Both have a basic left-right balance control buried in their settings. The other option would be to insert a spare, as one has, mini DSP 2x4 that he has on hand, as most of us do, just lying around. I tripping over the things all the time. But could the balance controls and his two sources have solved this issue? I don't know how balance works outside of a car. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, it's the same idea.
I feel like it's not... Is it just a louder in one versus the other? It is
just making one speaker louder and the other speaker quieter. That's all it's really doing. Yeah.
I mean, I don't see why that wouldn't work.
It should work.
But
if all it is a difference in levels.
Yes.
Yeah. If all it is a difference in levels and your right speaker in this case is louder than your left speaker, then yes, a basic balance control should be able to even that out. Yes. That should have worked. It's better that you discovered that the gain control had been switched. That's better. But yeah, balance control should have worked just fine.
So after finding the real culprit, the gain switch in the back of his Sasi monoblock app, and then seeing the measured result in Room EQ Wizard with the left and right speakers, these are Revel Performa BE M126BE bookshelves, by the way, which are beryllium tweeters, right? Is that what the BE stands for?
Beryllium tweeters, that's what the BE is for. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't have a pair of those just lying in the closet someplace?
Definitely. Spares all around.
It's just, it's hard to find them underneath all the mini DSPs.
That's right.
That's the problem. Yeah, you got to dig through the mini DSPs to get to them. So, and then seeing the measured results being very close in response, why don't they look more different? His right speaker does have a sidewall close to it, while his left speaker does not. Why isn't that making a bigger difference in the measured frequency response? Why isn't there a bigger boundary effect?
Well, there is. We can see it in the graph.
I was right. I mean, there's parts of it that are higher and parts of it that are lower.
It's specific frequencies. That's what's going on. It's the frequencies where the distance from the right speaker to that side wall, it's at the correct distance where at certain frequencies it is producing a boundary effect. It is making some of those sounds louder than others or canceling out some sounds, right? We got a couple little dips going on in there too. So we are seeing a boundary effect, and that is the characteristic of a boundary effect is that it is not universal across all frequencies. It's not the entire audible frequency range that the boundary effect exists. It's at specifically where the distance from sound producing thing to boundary, it's mathematical. It's all based on the wavelength. It's the time that it takes for that sound to go to that boundary, reflect off that boundary, come back and interact with the sound wave that's still coming out of the speaker. That's only going to take place at certain frequencies. So we do see it.
Right speaker is close to the wall. Which one's the right speaker? The blue.
The blue.
Yeah, so you see that bass boost there, and then around 800 to 1,000.
Yeah, we're actually
hertz.
seeing like a little bit of a dip in the range there, sort of like what is it, 300 to 500 hertz or something like that. That could be a little bit of a cancellation that's going on there, honestly, versus the left speaker. Yeah.
But if you look at the very top of it, up above 4K.
That's
it
right.
almost exactly tracks.
They're like superimposed, yes. Which is a testament to the design of those speakers, because that doesn't always happen. That means you've got very nice, even, wide dispersion on those tweeters, which Revel is known for with their waveguides. Yeah.
Hit my microphone. Sorry, guys. Joe Klesnick. Joe has put together plenty of setups with more than one pair of surround speakers at this point. He's very familiar with simply wiring 2 or more side surround speakers in series on each side. And yes, that functions just fine. But Atmos and DTS-X do provide the option for discrete additional surround channels. Have you heard of Trinnov?
Well, yes. Yeah. He has. Joe definitely
Surround
has.
1 speakers can go a little in front of the regular surrounds. The surround 2 speakers go a little behind the regular surrounds. There's like an image here of a stupid number of speakers.
That's
the high-end Trinnov and Storm
21.1.10. That's the full 34 plus LFE that Atmos can do there. But yeah, we got surrounds directly at 90 degrees to the middle row of seats in this diagram, and then we've got surround 1s that are in front of the regular surrounds and surround 2s that are behind the regular surrounds. Yes.
Right. So high-end Trinnov and Storm audio processors can be configured with these channels, but what about the more mass-market 9, 11, 13, and 15-channel receivers? He hasn't been able to find any mention of being able to set things up this way. Did he somehow overlook it? Nope, it doesn't exist. If not, and it truly is an option, why not? How difficult would it be for an AV receiver manufacturers to implement this as an option? Could it be added via firmware? So, I mean, you can make the argument that front wides kind of a little bit step into this category here. They are not the same thing.
Those are definitely meant to be in front of all the rows of seats. Those still front wides are.
Could AV receiver manufacturers implement this? I think we once again get into the question of processing power.
I mean, it's not just power. It's that like chips would have to be made with this embedded in them. I mean, we didn't get 9.1.6 capable receivers, like from the more mass market brands, until Dolby worked with some chip manufacturers to make those chips available. And there's been some indication that Dolby is working on some new chips that would allow for 11.1.8. So like not regular, x86 style CPUs that are doing it the way Trinnov and Storm Audio do it. Like they just have general purpose CPUs. And that's why they're able to, through software programming, implement this, entire version of Atmos, or every single speaker, which I think is 30.2 in the case of DTS-X, and have the unique Oro 3D speaker positions as an option as well. They can do all that because it's a general purpose CPU that they're using to do all of the calculation, and then it's up to them to write the software to make use of that. But in the case of more mass market AV receivers, and even from the slightly more boutique brands, like we're talking, Anthem or Arcam or something like that, they're slightly more, boutique brands, but they're still using chip-based things, pre-programmed chips that they put onto circuit boards. That's how that processing is getting done. It's not a general-purpose CPU that they can just reprogram. So this isn't something we're ever going to see just added as a firmware update to like a Denon A1H. That's not going to happen. It has to be built into the chips themselves.
Well, and then I think you really got to ask yourself, who is the consumer for this? We're already having a hard enough time getting people to put surround speakers in the proper place. Still, decades after surround sound has come out, trying to get a 5-point anything system implemented correctly in most people's homes. Their surround speakers are in front of them, or all both on one side, or just outside the main speakers for whatever reason. I mean, there's all sorts of things. So
I mean, we had
the example, you want it.
Yeah, we had the example of like 11 channel receivers. Now there's ones you've got the option of setting that up as 5.1.6, right? 6 overheads and 5 floor levels to get your 11 channels. But you go back several years, several product generations, still 11 channel processors, still 11 channel AV receivers, but you don't have that option of, 7.1.4 was the max. You don't have the option of making them 5.1.6, and there's no firmware update to let them do that because it was all built into the chips that they used at the time. So yeah, that's where that has to happen.
If you simply wanted independent trim levels and delay adjustments for 2 or 3 pairs of surround speakers, he knows he could add something like a mini DSP 2x4, but that would require then connecting the outputs of the mini DSP to additional external amplifiers. But what if he had, say, a 9 or 11 channel AV receiver, and he just wanted to do a 9 speaker configuration, all floor levels, no overhead speakers, and not 7.1 plus front wides, but 7.1 with 2 pairs of side surround speakers? Theoretically, the AV receiver already has enough amplifiers built in. It just doesn't have the independent surround and surround 1 processing.
Yeah.
So is there a way he could rig an external device like a mini DSP to provide the independent trim and levels for the surround and surround 1 speakers, but then feed the outputs back into the AV receiver to use its built-in amps rather than having to purchase and add external amplifiers? So what you're asking is, can you use the pre-outs, basically, to feed your mini DSP, and then use your pre-ins to feed it back into the AV receiver?
Yeah.
And that doesn't work. That doesn't.
I mean, I was trying to come up with like a zone 2 type of method type of thing. I
think this is so kludgy that it's just going to, even if you could make it make sound.
Yeah.
I think you would end up with some just super wacky stuff happening. And
regardless, it's still gonna equalize both of those side surround speakers together. There's no getting away from the equalization part of it being done across both of them. So, I mean, you could do, because if we're talking about, even in the scenario that he talked about, right, you use the pre-outs, it goes out to a mini DSP 2x4, that gives you independent trim and delay for, 2 side surround speakers on each side. You feed those to independent amplifiers. That's fine. I mean, that's cost in the form of the mini DSP. So what if instead you use the built-in amplifier for 1 surround speaker, because you can do that, and then the pre-out for that same surround speaker is also hot at the same time. So you just feed that to a little device that itself has some delay and some trim level built right into it, right? Just all in one device instead of a mini DSP 2x4. You're probably going to end up spending about the same amount of money, but now you have it all separate, right? So it's like, realistically, I don't really see a good incentive to do this and try and feed it back into the AV receiver. But yeah, if you just took the surround pre-outs, you fed that to, say, a mini DSP 2x4. You still use the built-in amplifiers for the surround channel as normal, and you use that pre-out that's hot at the same time. You feed that to a mini DSP. That gives you independent level and delay. You feed that back into like a stereo in, and you make that zone 2, and you play zone 2 in the main zone at the same time. I guess that could work. It just means, though, you were talking about like 7.1 with 2 side surround speakers, so 9 speakers, but still 7 channels. And there aren't very many AV receivers where the amplifiers that it steals for zone 2 aren't the surround backs.
Yeah.
Like, almost always it steals the surround backs to do the zone 2, so it probably still wouldn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Vasanth in India. First up, one of the questions Vasanth asked us last time he wrote in was about his M2 Mac Mini and wanted to get a new USB DAC since his Audio Quest Dragonfly Red had stopped working. Mm-hmm. We said to give the headphone output of the Mac Mini a try, which he did, but it definitely did not provide a pristine signal.
That's fair enough. That I'm not going to question. I've come across that same experience, so that
so
makes
he's been
sense.
Considering the topping D10S USB DAC, but we suggested the Fosse SKO2, which was available via Amazon India for about half the price. Mm-hmm. So he bought the Fosse, and he's happy to report he's blown away by its performance. It also provides great flexibility and every feature he was looking for. He's very happy. So he is very happy with that and wanted to say thanks.
You are welcome. I'm so happy that you're happy with it.
We are too. I am too. Now to his living room home theater setup. Last time he wrote in, he was strongly considering upgrading his Polk 10-inch subwoofer. Sasi was kind enough to write in and mention how rhythmic and tone winner subwoofers are available in India for reasonable prices. So he's excited to start researching those, but his subwoofer upgrade dreams are going to have to wait. His TV suffered an accident. He said in a couple photos, something definitely hit that screen. So I guess I'm assuming that this is cricket related.
I mean, it could be. I mean, that is
Didn't
a
they
spider
lose
web
to like
crack.
somebody important or something? Is that what happens? Is it cricket related? I feel like it's cricket related. Yes.
Yeah, that is a definitely very damaged TV.
Just look around it.
Unfortunately.
Just look around.
Yeah.
There won't be any warranty coverage for that, but do we think this is a case where he should try to have it repaired? No. Or that basically costs as much as buying a new TV, and therefore you could use it as a great excuse to upgrade to a larger screen. They said about 10 feet from the TV, he'd like to get a 75-inch. Yeah, you can't repair this, man. This is...
No. I mean, it isn't just like the front glass that's cracked. Like the image itself above that it's wiped out. Yeah. You'd be looking at replacing the entire stack inside of the frame. And honestly, we don't know that the frame isn't slightly damaged too, just seeing it from the front. So this to me is that TV is getting entirely replaced.
Yeah. So naturally thought of an OLED, but that simply isn't in the budget. They're aiming for the equivalent of about $1,500 US. The absolute maximum would be $2,000. The very top rated mini LED TVs right now are Sony's, but those cost as much as OLED. So that's out of the budget. So he knows we often suggest TCL in these cases, but their model numbers are different in India. Also, for whatever reason, LG's LCD TVs are available in India at very good prices compared to all those other brands. So is there anything from LG that we would highly recommend? Bottom line, should he pay to have no, you're not going to get the 55-inch TV repaired. No. And if he gets a 75-inch TV to replace it, which one should he get? He's really, really hoping a new TV would also have a much better eARC performance. Good luck with that last one.
I'm not going to hinge everything on that. That's not what you're
buying a new TV for. eARC is anything CEC related. Is you not? If it could work better, it would. So since it doesn't, it won't. That's so it.
We're definitely going to agree. We don't mind the idea of going to a larger screen size in here.
No,
you are sitting far enough away. There are limitations. We're not going to go insane. Price is chief among them, so we're not going to go too much crazy bigger. But yeah, I have one that I would suggest to you. It is from TCL, and right now, the selection that's available in India is not exactly the same as like what's in the UK and the rest of Europe. UK and Europe, the model numbers at least tend to be the same as the ones that you find in India. They're totally different model numbers in North America and totally different again in China. But the UK and Europe models, the model numbers are at least typically the same in India, but there isn't the exact same availability and selection. So if I were in North America, for this price range, I would almost certainly be pointing you to the one that in North America is called the QM751. There's a G on the end of that because it uses Google TV, but it's the QM, which is Quantum Dot Mini LED 7 series, and 51 means that it came out in 2024. It's the newest one. Fabulous TV. It's almost the equivalent of the QM8 from 2023. They bumped everything up in the new QM7. The equivalent model of that in the UK and Europe is the C855. Unfortunately, the C855 does not appear to be readily available in India. What is readily available in India is one rung down, the TCL C755. This model, the C755, does not have an exact analog sister model in North America. Because if you step one rung down in North America, you get to the Q651, and that does not have mini LEDs. It does have quantum dots, that's what the Q is, but it doesn't have mini LEDs, and it isn't as bright and all that. So the C755 that you can definitely find in India, it sits like right in between. You still get mini LEDs. You still get better brightness than the Q6 series. You still get quantum dots. But it isn't quite as bright and doesn't have as many local dimming zones as the C855, which is the same as the QM751 in North America.
It's all very, very... Take notes. Rewind. You're going to have to...
I'm just trying to give the full explanation of how I landed on this particular model. But the 75-inch C755, if I just do the conversion rate, it's about $1,800. The equivalent of if you're converting from Indian rupees. So yeah, I mean, we're within the price range that you mentioned. It's not as low of $1,500 that you were aiming for, but you said, $2,000, that's the max you could spend. So we wound up in there. If you take a step down, you're getting away from mini LEDs. You're getting away from this has over 500 zones of local dimming. This has about 1,500 nits of max brightness, right? The C855, the step up, that gets to close to 2,000 local dimming zones. It gets to like 2,000 nits of brightness. Like I say, it's like the 8 series from last year got stepped down to that. So C755, I think, hits all the right parameters that you're looking for. It's readily available. Amazon India has it in the price range you were talking about. So TCL C755.
All right. Ilango, before we get to his question for this week, Ilango had a few things he wanted to say. First up, he likes to support his favorite online content creators via Patreon, whenever he can, patreon.com/AVRant podcast.
That's right.
And out of all the shows he supports that way, he sends us the most. Thank
you. Isn't that nice?
He looked back at his emails, and his first one to us was in 2015, which was 9 years ago.
That's right.
And he'd been listening for a few years before that. He likes our current format and enjoys hearing a bit more of our personalities and side interests beside home theater. He says we really helped him a lot when they did their upstairs renovation last year. In particular, we got him to think about what his family room setup should not be, just as much as what it should be. And that meant the room needed to fit and work with the rest of the house rather than trying to make the rest of the house work more with a more theater-like setup.
Yeah.
So HSU in-wall speakers all around, a Phantom Center, gasp, and a SVS SB 2000 sub meant the sound system is almost invisible. Guests come in, don't even realize how many speakers are all around them, but they're amazed as soon as something starts playing. It was 100% the right way to go.
Hooray!
So now his basement renovation is coming along. A few weeks from now, all of the insulation will be in and drywall will be going up. It's still going to be a long room with the home gym on the other side of the wall on the left. There's a pitch. Dang it, I keep hitting my stupid mic. There's a picture on the Flickr album or also in the YouTube YouTube.
Just one angle, but we get a sense of what's going on here.
It's going to be a long room with the home gym on the other side of the wall on the left and lots of space behind the seats, but there will be doors, so technically it's an enclosed space, even if it's not going to be 100% soundproof, which no one wants anything. No one can afford anything 100% soundproof. We had talked about pre-wiring for more speakers than he intends to use at first, but wouldn't you know it, in the real world, there are existing structural beams and ducts and pipes and other challenges that could be overcome by throwing enough money at them, but can also be avoided if you just pick your priorities a little bit.
Yeah.
Whoa. Welcome to my world.
That's right.
So he did not pre-wire for front wides, and he did not pre-wire for front heights. He's pretty sure he'll live. Yeah, front heights.
Yep.
And nevertheless, he still has some FOMO, and that's where he'd like our help. In his mind, this not even constructed room has extra space. It has doors, and it is not 100% soundproof, so he might not be able to completely pressurize it with bass. And that means maybe he needs bass shakers? No.
There's your answer. We skipped right to the end.
No. You're just going to buy bigger subs, and that's going to be it. He didn't pre-wire for them, and he didn't plan on having them at first. He's experienced them at Dolby Cinemas and other home theaters, and he never actually liked them.
That's right.
You have fear of missing out on something you don't like?
Yeah.
But if he ever even thinks about adding them, now would be the time to have the wires pre-run for them, right? Get his low voltage contractor back in for a quick job before the installation and drywall starts, or maybe just run the wires himself. In his line of work, he's often the person other people come to and they ask him what to do. He tries to never tell them outright, and instead he provides information and advice via... First of all, I'm the wrong person to ask about stuff like this. I'm going to tell you what to do and tell you to shut up about any of your whatever. Risks versus benefits, and he tries to lay out all the options. Then he relies on them to make the decision. But can we just tell him what to do? Yes. Do not wire for this nonsense. That would not... Okay, I do think, I will be honest with you.
Yeah.
If you have not done this, I would recommend wiring an outlet on the floor.
A power outlet. I was just going to say the same thing.
Near your seats, because you will find out very quickly that no matter what you end up doing with these seats, a power outlet there is at the very least not going to be used, but at the very most is going to be the most integral part of your entire system because you'll be able to put power recliners there. You'll be able to, if you wanted to add like a wireless sub or wireless speakers back there, you've got power.
Could be lighting
you could put
too.
Lamps.
It could be very helpful for lighting sometimes.
LED lights underneath your normal couch that doesn't have power recline. You could do so many things. Put a power outlet down there or two.
Yeah.
One on either side of where the couch would be great. And just like a little cover. That you could like put carpet over the top of or whatever, that you could pull up if you needed to.
Or they have those embedded in floor outlets. That is an option.
Technically, you could then wire bass shakers with just the power outlets, because you could use a wireless transmitter and a receiver and then an amplifier all hidden underneath your couch to do all that stuff. But in no world are you going to do bass shakers for somebody who's tried them and doesn't like them. What are you, a masochist? Stop it. don't do that.
That is absolutely the answer. I love the notion, before everything is closed in and finished, have that in-floor outlet available. It is almost certainly going to be handy for your seating or something else. And then if you ever do, for some reason, decide that you want to add bass shakers to your seats, the amplifier for the bass shakers can live back there, plug into the in-floor outlet that you installed before you finish the room. Wireless transmitter gets the signal. Speaker wire goes from the amplifier that lives back there and goes to your seats. And you didn't have to worry about pre-wiring any speaker wire for the bass shakers that you're never going to use.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no world in which I suggest that you do this. Okay. I know that it's been a little bit under 2 hours, but we already have another podcast, and Sasi's big thing is massive, right?
Well, I was hoping we can chip away and maybe do one or two more, because Sasi's thing is not time sensitive, but I don't want to leave all of it because we're never going to get through it if we don't put a little dent in it.
I don't care about either. I'm so tired.
Well, then I'm going to have to put it at the beginning, and then we won't get to any other questions.
Brain fog, Rob.
I know.
I'm disabled.
Well, I'll talk about it. You can just read the questions.
I don't want to read. I got things to do. I want to go.
Sasi, we're going to see what we can get to. One or two here. One or two.
Sasi, whatever. He attended the Audio Advice Live 2024 AV show in person. He wanted to share a whole bunch of thoughts and ask us some questions along the way. First up, he thought the best overall home theater demo was, surprise, surprise, one of the few completely enclosed rooms with full light control. It had a Focal Utopia and Sopra speakers all around, along with Focal subs, all powered by Trinnov. Not waveforming yet, though. And using a JVC NZ900 projector on a 180-inch Studio Tech 130 screen. Don't tell what's his name about the Studio Stewart.
Karl.
Stupid.
He'd be a fan of that screen choice.
He thought the subs weren't up to the task of pressurizing the size of the room. This was a mix of brands, so he was disappointed they didn't go for some JTR subs or something. But aside from that, it sounded terrific. He saw lots of other projection screens being used in other rooms. Most went for ambient light rejecting or some other form of contrast enhancement. This room used a white screen with just a little bit of gain, 1.3, which is actually quite a lot of gain, but whatever. And it easily looked the best. White screens, who knew? Of course, it helps to be using a JVC NZ900 and have pretty darn good light control. And finally, for this room, you couldn't help be annoyed by how long the Trinnov processor took to lock on to the signal every time the source material was changed. Don't tell Dave. And it wasn't the JVC projector being slow. The image actually showed up quite quickly and before the audio unmuted itself. His own Denon A1H is way faster, almost instantaneous, and while it's an expensive receiver, it isn't even close to Trinnov's price. So what's the excuse there? The fact that it's a computer, I guess.
And Dave spent some time in our interview towards the end there talking about HDMI because we prompted him to.
Yeah.
And
let's poop on HDMI. Yeah.
We aren't the only ones who agree that there are some issues with implementing HDMI and then doing so in a general purpose CPU type of situation.
Right.
That's unfortunately what's going on there. I don't know how much faster they could make it, but those system on chip designs that the mass market AV receivers use, they have the advantage there.
They have the advantage there for sure. Yeah. Kef and REL seem to be working together a little bit at this show. REL was using Kef speakers along with their own subwoofers to show off their REL subwoofer stacking approach that we already discussed and completely disagreed with in the previous episode. Sasi thought the room sounded rather disappointing. There's 3 subwoofers stacked on top of each other. How hard?
On either side. There's 6 of them total, at least at the front of the room. And
on
I'm
the
pretty
inside,
sure only
and then they shove
the
the speakers in the
those speakers are right up against them walls there, yeah. and not even evenly so. They're unevenly distributed.
Pointed directly at the center channel, the center seat.
That's right.
And then Kef had their Blade speaker set up in a different room. They didn't have any REL subs, but they talked about using REL subwoofer stacking method, and had that set up using their own Kef KC92 subs. Sasi did think this was probably the best sounding 2-channel only room at the show, but the way they had everything set up to do with the bass rubbed him the wrong way. The Blade towers were running full range despite the 2 stacks of subwoofers. Everything was supposedly running as stereo bass, and of course there was the REL subwoofer stacking method nonsense as a whole. Why would a company like Kef, that seems to be based on good research, do such a thing? First of all, you got to remember the audience that they're speaking to at these shows. That's like the number one thing. And then you've got the engineers on one side saying, wait a second. And then the marketing people going, yeah, but we're going to do what we want because we agreed with, this company is going to use our speakers in their demo. That's probably more important to them than any of this other stuff. Like they can talk about this subwoofer stacking thing and all they're doing is parroting whatever. The marketing person is just parroting whatever REL told them to say. But it's more important to them that the KEF speakers be shown with these, because REL is catering to this audiophile nonsense crowd, and KEF would like to sell to those people. So whatever. I also
I have no idea about the truth of this matter, but those weren't the only subwoofers in KEF's room where they had the KEF blades, because they also had a full. I'm not sure if they look like Q series, not R series to me. But anyway, they had a full surround sound setup in their room as well. But they had the blades for their 2-channel demos. But I mean, they got a couple of their much, much larger KEF subwoofers also in there. And I'm like, were they actually using those techs of KC92s? It would be tough to know for sure if you're just sitting in the seat and demoing the sound in there. It'd be very tough to know if they were actually making use of those things or, just had the...
I would not be surprised. I've seen stuff like that happen before. I've actually been in demos where they said that speakers were being played at the end. They go, they're really these speakers.
Yeah. If you're a company, trying to market to the 2-channel audiophile crowd, you're like, how do we get these people to start buying some subwoofers? Because we know the home theater crowd, they're going to buy 4, and that's fantastic. But how do we get this moneyed crowd of 2-channel audiophiles to start buying subwoofers? I mean, first of all, we're going to tell them, of course you still run your speakers full range.
Yes.
We wouldn't ever stop running our speakers full range. We can't get away from that.
Yeah.
But if you use, get this, 6 subwoofers
stacked on top of each other, so it looks more impressive.
Still going to be stereo.
It's just about looks. It really is.
Still going to be stereo, but I mean, you've got to beat the home channel, the home theater crowd. What do those guys know with their 4 subwoofers? Pathetic. We use 6. It's got to be better. Yeah, I think that's honestly all that's going on.
Yeah. B&W brought their Nautilus speakers to the show. He didn't snap a pic of them, unfortunately, but they're the famously snail-shaped ones. I guess it says snail-shaped.
It's kind of like a conch shell type of shape.
That's what I always thought of.
Yeah. It's that whole golden ratio shows up in nature idea. That's how we're going to resonate the bass in these things.
Fibonacci sequence or whatever
that's
it is.
Right.
Yeah. B&W sells them for $100,000 per pair, and there's a wait list that is over a year long at this point.
Yeah. Takes them a while to make them.
I guess so. Sasi didn't think they sounded all that great, and B&W's reps almost sounded apologetic to him when he talked to them, saying that their current 800D4 series speakers are considerably more advanced at this point because they haven't changed the Nautilus design in 30 years. Yeah. By comparison, MoFi had their Source Point 888 towers in a different room. By the way, 888 is like a super lucky number in China. I think it's Chinese.
Yeah, Chinese
culture.
For sure. Like the number 8 for sure.
Yeah, they cost $5,000 a pair, and Sasi thought they sounded quite a bit better than the Nautilus. So all those people on the Nautilus waitlist it isn't honestly about sound quality for them, right? It doesn't matter, my man. It doesn't matter. They're never listening to them anyways. They're never listening to them. Let's be honest.
I have my doubts, all right.
Yeah, they just put them in a room, and I would not be shocked that there was not a wire connected to those dang things. Once they, I would be surprised if more than half of them have wires run to them. At all.
Or if they purchased wires for them, they're waiting for the cable risers to come in before they touch anything. So it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
No. People who are buying status speakers like that,
which I already talked about. Yes.
Yeah. That's all it is. It is absolutely. I mean, if you're waiting over a year for speakers that you're never even going to listen to, then who cares what they sound like? It's not what it's about.
Yeah. But again, I listen to one speaker in one room and one other speaker in another room, and now I can compare the two as one being better than the other. I think that's immaterial. I mean, I think those Nautiluses can sound phenomenal. I'm sure they can.
One would hope for $100,000 a pair.
But I don't think that's why anybody buys them. He had a good look at Mad VR's demos. They were using Sony OLEDs as displays, not projectors. Sasi didn't think that did them any favors. He thought that the Sony's regular built-in processing looked more accurate. He even checked on his own professionally calibrated displays once he got back home. No time delay there. And could instantly tell that the Mad VR demos were getting pretty far away from accuracy in the name of showing you more details in the shadows and highlights that are actually supposed to be difficult to make out. Mm-hmm. He's sure it would be more helpful for projection setups and OLEDs, but is this non-accuracy what Mad VR fans are so crazy about? So he has a couple of pictures of them having an A/B comparison here.
Yes.
And sharpening things, basically.
Well, I mean, not just that. I mean, it is absolutely boosting the shadow detail.
Yeah.
If you're looking at, you got Harry Potter's shirt going on there, and one of them is quite shadowy. That's the Sony just doing its regular Sony stuff on the right, which, by all accounts, by the recent Value Electronics King of TV shootout where they were comparing a calibrated but not attached to a Mad VR external processor, just internally calibrated Sony OLED against a 100% professional and fully calibrated mastering monitor, and Sony's came the closest to their consumer TV being 100% accurate to the mastering monitor. You look across at the one that's, got the Mad VR attached to it, and it's like, yeah, the shadow details are definitely brightened up. The highlights are extremely goosed. You've got this ghost image in the second Harry Potter image where it's like, it's bright white, with the Mad VR made those highlights where it's like, just kind of a dim little ghostly image over on the right-hand side. Sasi went back home. He's got a professionally calibrated TV. He's like, it looked more like the Sony OLED on the right than it did the one that's connected to the Mad VR on the left. So, I mean, the thing is, in a demo like this, Mad VR probably has every single enhancement feature that they have turned on. I don't know if turned up to the maximum that it can be, but almost certainly all of them turned on, just to be like, here's everything this thing can do. So, yeah, I mean, I know for sure there are the projector fans who are like, oh yeah, I wouldn't watch my projector without the Mad VR because there are shadow details that are just invisible on my projector without it. There are highlight that just completely get blown out to white without it, and it brings those all back and it makes them visible. And I love seeing all those details in the image. And it's like, there is no way to make the projector 100% accurate to an HDR signal because it simply cannot produce the nit values that are being asked for on the highlights or in the shadows, because it might be asking for stuff that is just below the inherent black floor of the projector, or maybe the projector can do it, but you don't have a complete bat cave of a room, so some of those little just above black details were supposed to be visible. You were supposed to be able to see them on the mastering monitor or on your OLED at home, but you watch it on your projection system, and some of those just above black details are gone. They've been washed out by the tiny amount of ambient light in your room, or that the projector just couldn't do it. If you really adjust your Mad VR, and it is fully adjustable, if you really, really hone in and adjust it, you can get it where you could put the mastering monitor next to a projection setup and get them looking as close to each other as you possibly could, and you wouldn't be able to match that with just the built-in calibration controls of that projector. I would argue for something like an OLED that's a lot less true. I don't really think, if you want accuracy to a mastering monitor, I don't think you need a Mad VR. I really don't. But in projection situations, I agree with you. That's where it would have the most benefit, but you would need to do some tweaking. You wouldn't just turn all the enhancement features on at their defaults and go, well, that's it. It must be perfect now.
Yeah. Let's do one more, then we're going to go. Jason Ulrich from Kinetics Noise Control was at the show. Sasi recognized him from our interview, so they chatted for a bit, and Sasi brought up AVRant. He thought they had an awesome demo idea. They had two rooms side by side, exact same size rooms, and they put identical sound systems in them both. But one room was bare, and the other was fully treated in Kinetics acoustic products. Closest thing Sasi has experienced to a direct A/B comparison of just room treatment differences, and it was the most striking difference he heard at the whole show. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment in a lot of other rooms, and they couldn't hold a candle to the difference that room treatments make. Have we ever been able to have something close to an A/B experience like that? Absolutely not.
No, not a whole room. No. I've been able to experience something pretty close to direct A/B for like a limited number of panels, right? Limited number of panels in place versus not. I've been able to experience that. And I wouldn't say that makes the same like really striking difference that you're talking about. I would say it's audible, right? When it's done correctly and you say remove some of the reflected energy from a wall that's close behind you, right? Typical thing, you got your couch close to the back wall and you experience panels versus no panels. And, well, who knows? I might say that's actually fairly striking. Sometimes it's pretty darn noticeable, how different the dialogue intelligibility might be of panels versus no panels if your couch is close to that back wall. And you can do a pretty quick direct A/B comparison. You got a couple of friends who can, hold the panels in place and take them away really quickly. You can do that pretty readily. But a whole room setup, no, I've never experienced it. But I also don't doubt it, right? You do a bare hotel room with a bunch of speakers in there versus a fully acoustically treated hotel room, exact same dimensions because they're identical hotel rooms side by side, same equipment in both of them. Yeah, that'd be pretty nice, and I completely believe you. I also believe that the hundreds of thousands of dollars of electronics differences didn't make as much difference as fully treated versus no treatments at all.
All right, so we just have Sasi left, I'm guessing?
Yep, just Sasi's on there. I did want to mention, got a couple questions that came in on Monday after the time that I cut things off on Sunday night. So Brandon and Kevin, I did receive your questions, and you'll be first up next week.
All right. I want to thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank Raf for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 130 patrons over at patreon.com, including Nathan and Ilango. Thank you very much.
That is right. Raf, thank you so much for that PayPal donation. And patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 130 patrons over there. And Nathan and Ilango, thank you for continuing to be two of them.
I also want to thank Dan, Christian, Nathan, Joe, Vasanth, and Ilango for sending us notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going. Thank you for thanking us.
Yes, indeed. Dan, Christian, Nathan, Joe, Vasanth, and Ilango, thank you very much for those notes of gratitude and encouragement. We super duper appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Mandry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.